Everyone transmigrated into a tribal survival world. Everyone starts with a single thatched hut, and each hut can summon one tribesman per day, while others summon little weakling chickens with zero combat power. Ling's tribesmen are all brawny, powerful men. Watch how he shows off his skills in this crisis-ridden world. Welcome to tribal survival. This is currently a primitive wilderness world. You may find yourselves in barren mountains, forests, plains, marshlands, or any other natural landscape. There is only one thing you can do: survive. It was as noisy as a wet market. I just summoned a tribesman and the guy is as skinny as a monkey. I got so frustrated I knocked him silly with one punch. I can't find a single female tribesman, though this one is old enough to be a grandma. At that moment, a heavy thud of footsteps was heard. A savage was walking toward Ling with his head held high and chest puffed out. Crucially, this savage was carrying a large tiger on his back. Didn't they say tribesmen are all old, weak, sick, or disabled? Mine doesn't seem right. Then, a line of small text appeared before his eyes. Scavenge for resources. The barbarian didn't seem to understand Ling's words, mumbled a bunch of gibberish, and then turned and left. Only then did Ling fix his gaze on that large tiger. Seeing an anatomized prompt, he clicked it decisively. Instantly, the entire tiger was butchered. In front of him appeared 100 portions of tiger meat, a complete tiger skin, and several large bone clubs. Meat alone wasn't enough. He had to find water. Ling knew drinking water was the key to survival. No sooner said than done, he grabbed a large bone club and headed out. To prevent himself from getting lost, he carefully made small marks every stretch of the way. It was high noon and the sun was like a giant fireball, making Ling's throat feel like it was smoking. So hot. Where can I find a water source? Right. Let's see what other players are chatting about. The chat room was still buzzing, but they were all talking about food. Did that mean no one had obtained any food yet? Thinking of this, Ling sent a message. No matter how many resources you have, what are you guys eating? I'll give you 10 wood for it. Big boss, I'll give you 5 stones for some. Everyone was getting red-faced and frustrated over a single bite to eat. That person was selling it in the trading market for 15 wood or 10 stones. Although the price was high, it was snatched up instantly. Someone even put water up for sale. But since they didn't have containers, the water spilled all over the ground the moment it was taken out. Seeing this, Ling stopped exerting himself to find a water source. After all, he could use tiger meat to trade for water. Soon, Ling returned to his thatched hut. The barbarian happened to return at the same time, bringing back 2 blueprints, one for a wooden bucket and one for a stone pot. But he still needed materials to craft them. He opened the trading market again and listed his tiger meat. The tiger meat was snatched up the moment it was listed. Keep in mind he had listed 50 portions in one go. In exchange, he got 400 wood, 150 stone, 100 units of sweet water, and 1,000 thatch. Afterward, Ling impatiently began crafting with the traded resources. First, he used the wood to build 4 simple wooden buckets and took out the water he had just exchanged. He also used the stone to craft an excellent stone pot. Having finished all this, Ling looked at his tribesmen and found his stamina had risen from 50 to 55. This meant resting inside the thatched hut could restore stamina. He issued the order to find resources again. The barbarian nodded obediently and then dashed off in a blur. Next, Ling upgraded his thatched hut. A few seconds later, the ragged hut instantly grew larger. It looked even more formidable than the first barbarian. In the previous episode, Ling made a killing in the trading market relying on tiger meat. When he tallied his resources, he actually found he had 170 wood, 77 stone, 100 liters of sweet water, and 49 pounds of tiger meat. While other players were still worrying about a single meal, he had already achieved roast meat freedom. Only to find the requirements for a house-grade thatched hut were absurd. Not only did it require 1,000 thatch and 2,000 wood, but it also required a never-before-seen resource: rope. This level of difficulty was harder than scoring full marks on 3 final exams combined. Meanwhile, the chat room had long since exploded. The screen was full of people begging the tiger meat boss to share his experience. Others were being cornered by crocodiles at their front doors, crying for their parents. Some were so hungry their vision was swimming, gnawing on stones and fantasizing they were eating chicken legs. Ling ignored them. He accurately locked onto a player selling an animal clothing blueprint. Brother, 2 pounds of meat for your blueprint. The other party was so startled they agreed at lightning speed. With these negotiation skills, it would be a loss not to go haggle at a wet market. After getting the blueprint, Ling was dumbfounded to find he still needed to find bone needles and fiber, more resources he hadn't seen yet. He'd gather the materials sooner or later. When the time came to make a leather coat, he'd be the coolest guy around. Subsequently, Ling used his remaining tiger meat to trade for 1,000 thatch and 120 wood. He then chose 2 spots near his hut and selected build. In the blink of an eye, 2 new houses rose beside his own hut. Looking at the 3 huts clustered together, Ling's heart was full of pride. Not bad, not bad. Now this looks like a tribe. Time quickly reached evening. The first barbarian dragged back a small deer. Ling signaled for him to go rest. It wasn't clear if the barbarian understood, but he proceeded to pick up a stone bowl and drink water. It seemed this barbarian wasn't that savage. As long as he guided him well, he would follow orders. Seeing the deer carcass beside him, Ling clicked Animize. Another 100 pounds of meat were credited, along with a deer hide and deer antlers. These were all good things, maxing out his quality of survival. By the time the barbarian's stamina recovered to 50, Ling didn't send him out to find resources again. After all, nights in the primitive era were extremely dangerous. Just as Ling started a campfire, the battle-hungry barbarian finally returned. He was seen panting as he dragged back a 1,000 pound wild boar. When he slammed the boar onto the ground, the earth trembled. Seeing this, Ling performed another anatomy on the wild boar. This time, 1,000 pounds of meat were obtained. While others were still starving, Ling already had half a ton of surplus food. He then boiled a pot of deluxe meat soup with tiger penis and deer antlers. The aroma wafted for miles. The two barbarians turned into eating machines. 20 pounds of roasted meat vanished in an instant. In the end, they devoured a total of 50 pounds of meat. Ling only managed to grab a little over a pound for himself. Looking at the two barbarians with their bellies rounded like balls, he couldn't help but complain, "Am I raising bodyguards or two mobile rice buckets?" After eating and drinking his fill, Ling threw a stupid question into the chat room. "Family, do your barbarians need to eat?" Wanting to test the situation of other people's tribesmen. The replies came instantly. Someone discussed how their tribesman looked like a skinny monkey yet ate a whole meal of wild berries, making the player slap their thigh in regret. Someone else sobbed that all the wild berries they collected went to the tribesman. One player in a swamp had already lost their tribesman's life to a fierce crocodile attack. After reading the messages, Ling secretly bloomed with joy. Luckily, his barbarians were strong and could eat proper foodie special forces. Seeing the two barbarians were finished, he drove them into the huts he had prepared for them in advance. Soon it was the next morning, and another new surprise appeared. Outside the hut appeared a smart barbarian and a swimming barbarian. The smart barbarian learned things exceptionally fast and was suitable for being a butler. The swimming barbarian could jump into the water and be as agile as a fish. Looking at the two barbarians before him, the corners of Ling's mouth curled up slightly. It seemed his luck was indeed very good. He wasn't in a hurry to dispatch them. Instead, he made breakfast. This morning, perhaps because they weren't very hungry, the five of them only ate 50 pounds of deer meat. If it had been like last night, 100 pounds probably wouldn't have cut it. After the meal, Ling gave a grand wave of his hand and let the four barbarians go out to forage on their own. He wondered what treasures they might bring back today. Once the savages left and he had some free time, he opened the chat room only to find that last night hadn't been peaceful. Someone wailed that a wolf had rushed into his hut at night. If his tribesman hadn't risked his life, he would have been torn to shreds. Another player's situation was even worse. A bear rushed into his dwelling in the middle of the night and killed his tribesman in the blink of an eye. After scrolling through the news, the back of Ling's neck broke into a cold sweat. It turned out the night was basically buffet time for monsters. He had to upgrade his dwelling quickly, or one day he'd be wiped out by monsters and have nowhere to cry. But looking at the materials needed for high-grade thatch, 2,000 wood and 500 stone, this wasn't an upgrade. It was an attempt on his life. But our brother Ioshin was a tough guy holding hundreds of pounds of meat. No sooner said than done, he dove straight into the trading market. First, he traded 10 pounds of tiger meat for a flashy roper, then took out 20 pounds of tiger meat and 400 pounds of pork, forcefully exchanging them for 30,000 thatch and 2,000 wood. He nimbly twisted the thatch into rope and then hit the upgrade button. A flash of light passed and the hut upgrade was successful. Before he could catch his breath, a thick-set barbarian popped out of the hut. Ling's eyes lit up. This is a brave and fearless heart. When he goes out to collect resources, he is likely to bring back harvests beyond your imagination. "Go out and get me some good stuff," he ordered directly without nonsense. The barbarian took the order and ran off. Afterward, Ling didn't stay idle. He used more pork to trade for materials and then, in short order, built 3 more thatched huts. Man, this was only the second day of tribal survival, and he was already a tribal big boss with 6 huts. Time flew by to noon, but not one of the barbarians who went out foraging had returned. This made Ling so anxious he paced in circles. Why aren't the savages back yet? Nothing better have gone wrong. Just as he was burning with anxiety, he suddenly spotted a figure slowly and leisurely swaying over. As it got closer, Ling nearly dropped his jaw. That barbarian was carrying 2 adult lions on his shoulders. One lion weighed 200 kilograms. 2 added up to 400 kilograms. How much strength did it take to carry that? The barbarian walked up, threw the lions on the ground with a clang, and then plopped down on his butt, gasping for breath. What kind of god-tier barbarian is this? Able to solo 2 lions? Truly fierce. Seeing the barbarian was exhausted, Ling brought over some sweet water for him to drink. With a few glug-glug gulps, a large basin of water was drained by the brave barbarian. After drinking, he lay directly on the ground to rest. A moment later, Ling observed his condition and was surprised to find that he had recovered 15 points of stamina in just that short time. Moreover, before this, his stamina reached 20, he could go out to work. It turned out the minimum stamina requirement for going out was 20. Go rest first. We'll eat together when the others get back. The brave barbarian seemed to understand, nodded, and walked toward his own hut. Ling didn't intend to give him special treatment. After all, it would be unfair to the other barbarians. Unless he could think of a way to give everyone a pack of jerky. As for now, he naturally had to process those 2 lions. He clicked the anatomize button, and in the blink of an eye, the lion skin and meat were separated, and the bones were scattered to the side. There was one bad thing about automatic anatomy. The organs and blood could no longer be found. Not bad. 2 lions, 200 pounds of meat acquired. After processing the lions, Ling opened the trading market. Scrolling back and forth, it was all common materials and blueprints for pots and bowls. Nothing rare. He turned and dove into the chat room, throwing out a nuclear bomb of a message. Who has rare items? Private message me, I'll trade lion meat for them. The moment this message went out, the chat channel instantly exploded. Someone asked in disbelief, lion meat? Did the big boss hunt a lion himself? I'm sorry to be a fellow human. Heavens, 1 lion, that would probably be enough for me to eat for half a month. Big boss, I have it. I have it. I have a blueprint here. Sell me the meat. Looking at the screen full of messages, Ling also discovered a major issue. So far, it seemed only his tribesmen knew how to hunt. Other players' tribesmen were simply too weak. Furthermore, food was the hardest currency in the future. The price of the food in his hands was destined to rise even more. Ling's sentence, who has rare items? Private message me, I'll trade lion meat for them, directly blew up the chat room. After all, players who could produce lion meat as hard currency in this wilderness world were rare. Sure enough, as soon as the message was sent, private message notifications started ringing like a death knell. The first to send a message was Jang Dafu. He tossed a glowing multicolored picture into the dialogue box. Big boss, look at this treasure. Ling clicked it. The description of the colorful made his eyes shine. It could chirp and also guide lost tribesmen home. Although the tribesmen currently returned during the day, there was no telling when the weather would turn in this ghostly place. So this thing was definitely a treasure. Trade for 10 pounds of lion meat, Ling quoted directly. Seeing the big boss relent, Zhang Dafu immediately started scheming. Big boss, it's easy for you to get food. Give me a few more pounds. If I have any treasures in the future, I'll offer them to you first. Ling let out a cold snort in his heart. This world was full of danger, and it wasn't worth gambling his luck for such a small benefit. 10 pounds non-negotiable. He closed Zhang Dafu's dialogue box, and a second private message popped up immediately. Attached with a blueprint for a hoe dagger. The note stated it was a magical hoe dagger that added 5 points of damage to wild animals. At the very least, this thing could serve as a weapon. Though he didn't know what made it magical, Ling figured it wouldn't be a loss, even if used as a kitchen knife, and it could provide self-defense if he encountered beasts. He replied with an offer of 5 pounds of meat, and the other party replied with deal instantly. This speed showed they'd been lurking for a long time. Once the trade was complete, the greedy Jiang Dafu also responded. Fine, big boss. 10 pounds it is. I'll trade. Ling readily sent out the 10 pounds of meat. The moment the night pearl reached his hand, a prompt popped up in the thatched hut asking if he wanted to socket it. Socket it, he ordered. The night pearl flew to the roof with a whoosh and slowly merged into it. The thatched hut's interface now showed a lighting function, but the footnote made him frown. Knight's activation may simultaneously attract unknown enemies. Please be prepared for battle. Damn it, you didn't say that before I socketed it. Had he known the risk, he wouldn't have installed this piece of junk. While he was pondering the lighting function, another private message jumped out. Hello, I have a construction blueprint here. Please take a look before answering me. When Ling clicked on the blueprint, a look of wild joy instantly appeared on his face. It was the brick he had been longing for, the key material for upgrading the thatched hut. Although he still had to set up a kiln first, he had to have this blueprint. I'll offer 10 pounds of meat, Ling said, intending to test the price first. The player named Union replied with a perfectly calculated response, clearly an old pro. After the trade, the brick manufacturing blueprint appeared in Ling's construction list. On the other end of the trade, a little girl with twin ponytails jumped up in excitement. With this food, she dared to produce a third tribesman. Just then, a barbarian returned like a gust of wind, holding a design blueprint in his hand. Ling took a look and almost laughed out loud. It was the Kill Nim. However, the note gave him a bit of a headache. Building the kiln required digging a large pit first. He glanced at the silly-looking barbarian in front of him, and a mischievous grin curled onto his lips. Why bother digging a pit himself when he had a ready-made toolman? With that thought, Ling first traded 25 pounds of lion meat for 500 wood, then used 20 pounds to get 300 units of stone. He dragged the barbarian behind the thatched hut to find a suitable empty spot. Digging such a large hole with bare hands was out of the question, so he thoughtfully handed over a large bone club. Using a mix of words and gestures, he instructed, "Dig the hole like this." He demonstrated the movements while commanding. The barbarian took the club blankly and began to dig the pit, imitating him. Ling lay down on the grass, calling it supervising, but ended up falling straight asleep in the sun. He didn't wake up and stretch until 4 p.m. when the sun was about to set. This nap was truly comfortable. Then, he remembered the pit-digging barbarian. He walked to the clearing and saw that the barbarian was gone, leaving behind a pitch-black hole. He shouted into the hole a few times, and a thump-thump-thump echo came from inside. Just how deep did he dig? Ling wondered. It seemed the kiln project depended on the results of the barbarians digging. To be fair, this barbarian was too honest. Ling told him to dig a pit, and he had actually hollowed out a 10-meter deep hole. Come out. That's enough. The tapping sound inside didn't stop. Instead, it became even more rhythmic. Ling's eyes darted. A barbarian might forget anything, but they were more proactive about eating than anyone else. Time to eat. This phrase was more effective than any command. The barbarian crawled out with a face full of confusion, his expression clearly asking, "Where's the food?" Looking at his status panel, his stamina was down to a pitiful 15 points. He likely would have collapsed in the hole if he kept digging. Go back and rest first. The barbarian ran toward the thatched hut with a thump thump thump. It was unclear if he truly understood or just wanted to wait for food at the hut. Once he ran off, Ling pulled up the material panel. The moment the system prompted whether to build the kiln, he clicked confirm decisively. The system's construction speed was absurd. In the blink of an eye, the original hole turned into a large kiln. The panel showed it could fire 500 bricks. Next, he opened the trading market again, only to find there was no sand or soil in the entire market. It seemed no one had realized the importance of these two items yet. Frustrated, Ling opened the chat room to see if anyone was willing to trade. The messages were a constant stream of pleas for help and complaints. Someone save me. It's me again. Xiao Lu from the marsh. Those two crocodiles are looking at me and drooling. Stop screaming. It's useless. I haven't heard of anyone actually meeting up with anyone else yet. Who has sand and soil? I need them to upgrade to a wooden house. Ling typed out a line during a gap. The chat room exploded instantly. Someone shouted that crap was everywhere. Someone gasped that the wooden house was the evolved version of the thatched hut. Others joked about reporting Ling for cheating. Seeing their faces full of envy and jealousy, Ling nodded with satisfaction. This was exactly the effect he wanted. Displaying a bit of strength could serve as leverage for future trades. He then listed 75 pounds of meat on the trading market. The condition was 1 pound of meat for 100 units of soil or 100 units of sand. After setting it up, Ling waited patiently. Within an hour, the trade notification pings wouldn't stop. The players by the river had finally reacted. Who wouldn't be happy to trade free sand for meat? Once the sand and soil were gathered, Ling dragged the materials into the kiln. The moment he lit the fire, a line appeared on the panel. Estimated time, 8 hours. Seeing it was still early, Ling returned to his thatched hut. As soon as he arrived, he was startled into taking half a step back by the sight before him. The battle-hungry barbarian was dragging an 800-kilogram yak, while the swimming barbarian was carrying a live crocodile in his arms. When the two giants were dropped on the ground, the thatched hut shook. Ah, this you can actually solo these things? That's ridiculous. Looking at their status panels, the battle-hungry barbarian's stamina had dropped to 2 points, and the swimming barbarian's was only at 30. These two had literally squeezed out their last breath to drag the prey back. If this stamina hit 0, would they die or just collapse motionless on the spot? Ling did the math. These two preys added up to a full 2,200 pounds of meat. How long would it take to eat all that? At the same time, Ling impulsively took a screenshot of the scene. In the photo, the massive yak and the wide-mouthed crocodile were placed side by side, looking exceptionally shocking. He immediately sent the photo to the chat room. The moment the image uploaded, the entire chat room blew up. Wah, big boss, help me. The crocodile outside my door is too strong. Wait, why is one missing? Wasn't he taken by the big boss to be a companion for the one inside? Ling smiled at the saltiness in the chat room. He wanted this effect. However, the sun had already set, and the smart barbarian hadn't returned yet. Better prepare dinner first. Maybe he'll be back in a bit. Dinner had to be good and meat soup was a must, but the seasoning was still lacking. Thinking of this, Ling spoke in the chat room again. Who has seasonings? Trade for meat. We're still worrying about what to eat today, while the big boss is already thinking about how to eat better. This is just ridiculous. I have chili peppers. They can add flavor. Big boss, I PM'd you. A dozen private messages flooded in with all sorts of offers. Just as he was picking seasonings, a sudden clap of thunder erupted in the originally calm sky. This thunder came continuous. Ling looked up at the sky, his heart skipping a beat. If the rain got heavy, could the brick kiln hold up? And the smart barbarian, why wasn't he back yet? As the thunderclaps fell, the rain in the sky grew heavier. Ling rushed to the kiln and found that the originally open-air brick kiln was now in a sealed state. This kiln is somewhat user-friendly. He couldn't stay outside anymore. Ling quickly hid in the high-grade thatched hut to warm himself by the fire. The other barbarians were sitting around the fire drinking meat soup. As the thunder rolled outside, a notification suddenly sounded in Ling's ear. Duration unknown. Players, please prepare accordingly. After the notification, a large exclamation mark appeared in Ling's vision. Enable the 7-color night pearl to guide them. He stared at the words, feeling conflicted. The rain disaster had just arrived. Turning on the night pearl might attract fierce monsters. One mistake could make all his advantages vanish. Then he noticed the barbarians staring at the door and shivering. Their fear wasn't because of the rain, but concern for their missing companion. Considering the barbarians' feelings, Ling decided to turn on the night pearl. Sure enough, once the 7-color night pearl was lit, the barbarians' anxious expressions gradually calmed down. But this piece only lasted 20 minutes. Suddenly, wolf howls came through the rain and mist. Without Ling saying a word, the barbarians had already snatched up their bone clubs. The sound of the wolf pack's footsteps got closer and closer, suddenly thumping against the thatched hut. They wanted to tear down the house. Go out and face the enemy. Upon hearing the order, the barbarians charged out like cannonballs, swinging their bone clubs with a whistling wind. It was almost one hit per wolf. Fortunately, the rain was washing everything away, otherwise the scent of blood would have permeated the entire tribe. After 5 or 6 minutes of slaughter, the wolf pack finally lost their nerve. Just as Ling thought he could catch his breath, a wolf king walked out of the rain, baring its teeth and growling at him. That look, it was hard to tell if it wanted peace or a fight to the death. Ling didn't understand, but the brave barbarian walked toward the wolf king. Miraculously, the wolf king lowered its head and let the barbarian's rough hand stroke it. Then, the brave barbarian gestured to Ling for a long time, then pointed at the wolf king. Ling finally understood. The wolf king wanted to submit to him. Except, with Ling's confirmation, the wolf king threw its head back and howled, and all the wolf cubs followed suit. Even more strange, as soon as the howling stopped, the wolf king suddenly turned and bit the severely injured wolf cubs on the ground. 15 injured wolves were all bitten to death in less than 10 seconds. Is this a greeting gift for me? Using the meat of your own kind? Ling really couldn't understand animal logic, but he didn't stay in the rain. He gestured for the Wolf King to bring the remaining wolves inside. A loyalty column suddenly appeared on the panel, showing 75 for the Wolf King and an average of 82 for the other wolves. This loyalty far exceeded the safety line of 60. As long as it didn't drop below 60, the pack wouldn't betray him. Ling then anatomized all the dead wolves, yielding a total of 750 pounds of meat, along with 15 wolf skins. All this was watched by the wolves under the eaves, but they reacted as if they hadn't seen a thing. It seemed high loyalty was the way to go. Just then, the soaking wet smart barbarian finally returned, clutching 3 medicinal herbs. The panel showed his stamina was down to 10 points. He had clearly braved the rain to get back. Ling handed a bowl of hot soup to the smart barbarian, and then opened the chat room. The night in the heavy rain was a chorus of wailing in the chat group. Is it really okay for Brother Ling to show off like this? We're all suffering a disaster here. I wonder what he's going through. Ling looked at these posts, but ultimately didn't say what had happened to him. It was always better to keep a card up one's sleeve. Outside, the rain continued. Inside, the fire crackled. The barbarians and wolf cubs were squeezed together, already asleep. He wondered if taking in this pack of wolves was a blessing or a curse, and what they would face next. Once the bricks were fired tomorrow, he had to add a layer of bricks to the thatched hut to feel secure. The rain outside kept pouring. The sky was so dark it was impossible to tell if it was early morning or afternoon. Ling woke from a sleep and stretched. The third barbarian, the somnolent barbarian, was the most ridiculous. His note said that because he loved sleeping so much, his stamina was often full when he returned from gathering. Of course, his gathering was always very perfunctory. Is somnolent a skill? Did he come here to retire? As he was complaining, the rain outside suddenly got heavier. Raindrops as big as peas pounded densely against the hut. A gust of wild wind blew, feeling as if the hut would be blown away the next second. Gosh, I have to keep reinforcing the hut. Ling opened the chat room to see how everyone was doing after the night. The group had become a disaster venting convention. Someone said their thatched hut was flooded, and they were sitting on a hill with their tribesmen watching the house float away. Someone else asked for cold medicine, saying they were nearly frozen stiff. Ling watched for a while and then sent a message pretending to be bored. Have you guys summoned any weird tribesmen? I just got a somnolent one. Big Boss Aotian, did you recruit a weird tribesman too? Because of the continuous rain, many people had nothing to do, so there were a lot of replies. The person speaking directly attached a screenshot below their words. Ling clicked it. Good heavens. The note said, "What can you do without hands?" Following the first person's response, a bunch of ridiculous screenshots popped up one after another. For example, the short-sighted Milu man status. There was also the plague rodent status. This is beyond any one person's daily. Will die when stamina reaches 0. The anti-diction is not match. Will die when stamina reaches 0. The anti-diction is also status. Cannot travel long distances. Can gather, but gathering consumes double stamina. Without comparison, there is no harm. The screen full of ridiculous tribesmen made Ling feel great. Compared to this, my somnolent barbarian seems pretty reliable. He then draped an animal skin over himself as a coat and went to the kiln to see how the bricks were doing. He found there were over 6 hours left. It seemed the reinforcement plan would have to wait. He returned to the hut and found the barbarians gathered around the fire gnawing on wild boar meat. For this breakfast, they only ate 30 pounds. Likely because they hadn't gone out to be active, their appetites had shrunk. Because the wood was used up, Ling used 20 pounds of crocodile meat to exchange for 400 units of wood. Fortunately, some players had stored wood in the system warehouse so it wasn't soaked. Otherwise, burning wet wood would choke a person to death. Suddenly, Ling received a private message from Yunyan, who he had traded with before. Great God, do you have anything to treat a cold? I'll trade you this for it. The attached picture was a blueprint. Ling clicked it and found it was excellent wood. The note said it could replace ordinary wood and build things that were sturdier. Good stuff. He was delighted. This blueprint was tailor-made for upgrading the thatched hut. And last night, the smart barbarian had just happened to bring back 3 cold medicinal herbs. I have it, but I can only give you 1. I'll trade. Once the trade was done, Yunyan took the herb and boiled it in a pot. Soon, a pot of medicinal soup was ready. He and his 5 tribesmen drank the soup together. While defending against a water monster intrusion last night, they had all caught colds in the woods. This soup was a lifesaver. Back on his end, the Ling was looking at the remaining 2 herbs, thinking about how to use them. Just then, the smart barbarian walked up to him and gestured while babbling. Ling watched for a long time without understanding. The smart barbarian pointed at the herbs in his hand, then pointed outside, and finally at the agile barbarian. You want to take him out to find these herbs? The smart barbarian first nodded, then shook his head and pointed to all the barbarians except the somnolent one. Ling understood now. Although he was a bit worried, seeing the grit on the barbarians' faces, he had to go along with them. The smart barbarian then led the team into the rain. Only the somnolent one was still deep in his dreams, continuing to sleep soundly on the hay. Ling didn't wake him up. If this guy fell asleep in the rain while gathering, that would be a huge loss. He came to the hut door and watched the barbarians' retreating backs disappear into the rain. That feeling was like a young wife hoping her husband returns home safely. The smart barbarian led his brothers into the heavy rain. Actually, these guys had always been tactical in hunting. Ling just didn't know. Those powerful beasts were all taken down by their cooperation. The smart barbarian shouted a code word, and the barbarians behind him immediately sped up like they were on steroids. The rain hitting their bodies felt like nothing. After running for about 20 minutes, the group of 7 arrived at a cluster of thatched huts. They had discovered this place yesterday. Needless to say, a bloody hunt was about to begin. Back with Ling, he was frowning at the prices in the trading market. After thinking for a long time, he decided to raise his buying price. 1 pound of meat for 30 pieces of dry wood or 40 pieces of wet wood, limited to 1,000 pounds. Seeing Ling's price, wails immediately sounded in the chat room. Although 1,000 pounds of meat looked like a lot, it couldn't stand up to the sheer number of players. Within 10 minutes of being listed, it was snatched up. Ling was overjoyed at the materials he got. A total of 3,000 pieces of dry wood and 36,000 pieces of wet wood. Just as he was getting happy, a sudden sound of footsteps came from outside. He went to the door and, good heavens, 3 yak carcasses were lying on the ground, with 5 soaking wet barbarians standing behind them. Come in quickly and dry off, eat something. The barbarians entered the house one by one. Ling counted and found that of the 7 who went out, only 5 had returned. Specifically, the most important smart barbarian was missing. What happened? Where are those 2? The barbarians gestured for a long time, but Ling didn't understand. Finally, the somnolent barbarian opened his sleepy eyes, pointed at the grass bundle on the bedside table, then pointed outside. Ling finally understood. Those 2 had gone to pick herbs. It was actually because he was good to the barbarians that these guys were willing to brave the rain to work. If it were those players who were mean to their tribesmen, they wouldn't move even if killed. This was Ling's hidden perk. Right, I have to process the yaks quickly or the meat will spoil. He went outside, pointed at the yak carcasses, and silently thought, "Animize." Instantly, the 3 yaks turned into 3,600 pounds of meat. Adding yesterday's, he had a total of 4,800 pounds. Even if turned into beef jerky, it would be 2,400 pounds. Now the materials for the wooden house upgrade were secured. He simply listed another 2,000 pounds of yak meat to buy wood. The moment the trade was listed, the chat room blew up again. Big Boss Iotian is too fierce. Where did he get so much meat? I'm so envious. Damn it, last time I boycotted Big Boss Iotian for driving up prices, and you guys snatched it all up instantly. I didn't get any. Luckily, I was fast this time. Before long, another 2,000 pounds of meat were gone. This time he got back 6,000 pieces of dry wood and 72,000 pieces of wet wood, nearly 120,000 in total. Meanwhile, the agile barbarian was holding a stone the size of a pigeon egg. What treasure is this? Ling took the blue crystal handed over by the agile barbarian, and a prompt immediately popped up on the panel. The survival manual had mentioned merchants, but 3 days in, there hadn't been a sign of one. Ling thought about it and put it in his backpack. He'd need it sooner or later. Time flew, and it was night again. Inside the hut, it was lively. The barbarians were holding bowls of meat soup and roasted meat sizzled over the fire, dripping oil. Because of seasonings like chili and peppercorns, the food wasn't exactly gourmet, but it was much better than the bland flavor before. Just then, a crisp knock sounded at the door. Ling didn't take it seriously at first, but the barbarians suddenly tensed up, their faces showing alert expressions. Knock, knock, knock. Another round of knocking. Seeing this, Ling went to the door. Because of the barbarian's weariness, he became nervous too. He pushed the door open abruptly and saw a short old man standing at the door, wrapped in a blue cloak. Seeing this, the barbarians also relaxed their alertness. It seemed this old man was no threat. "Hello, Lord. I am a traveling merchant. I smelled the aroma from far away. Can I do business with you?" "Of course. I was just worried about not finding a merchant, and here you are." Ling decided on the spot they should eat, and that there was plenty of food. The merchant ate to his heart's content, draining 3 large bowls of meat soup before putting his bowl down. "Thank you for the hospitality, Lord. For the payment for this meal, you can pick one item." The merchant poured out 5 things with a clatter. Ling looked closely and nearly coughed up blood. This really was a medicinal herb merchant. All 5 items were medicinal formulas. And strengthened. The most extreme was the perfect all-in-one soup, with a note saying, "This soup will nourish you to death. Do not try it lightly." Ling immediately set his sights on the strengthen. This stuff could make one's physique stronger, and crucially, he happened to have all the materials. He reached into the bedside table and pulled out the sickle gold herb. The merchant's eyes bulged like bells. "This is sickle gold herb. You actually have this treasure. Good luck. Can't help it. I'll take that one." Ling immediately began making the strengthening soup according to the formula. He first put the herb in the pot and boiled it for 10 minutes. When the water was nearly dry, he added the prepared bull penis. Miraculously, the bull penis melted directly into the soup, releasing a dense aroma. Ling couldn't help but scoop a bowl and drink it, feeling a warm and comfortable sensation spread through his body. He didn't think much of it, and drank 2 more bowls until the pot was empty. Suddenly, he felt a scorching heat all over his body as if he were about to catch fire. Only then did he notice a line of small text at the bottom of the formula. "Special note must be consumed in 3 separate doses, otherwise prone to body explosion and death." Crap, why didn't you say so earlier? You're too impulsive. I have a medicinal pill here, eat it quickly. The merchant pulled out a pill. This thing could dissipate the medicinal power that the body couldn't withstand. Ling didn't have time to think. He snatched the pill and swallowed it. Soon, a cool feeling spread through his body, neutralizing the heat. His vision went black, and he fell to the floor in a deep sleep. Seeing Ling was fine, the merchant prepared to leave. Just then, the somnolent barbarian who had been asleep suddenly blocked him. To the merchant's surprise, the barbarian took the nature crystal and waved it in front of him. "A nature crystal? You guys dug up this treasure in the heavy rain? This is tribal hard currency. Keep it from me, I'll be back." Soon, the merchant left and disappeared into the rain. It wasn't until the next day that Ling finally woke up. When he opened his eyes, he found the world had become exceptionally clear. His years of slight nearsightedness were actually cured. He felt his body. His originally loose abdomen now had 8-pack abs, and his strength had increased at least 3 times. The heavy rain outside was still continuing. Such weather was completely unsuitable for going out. While making breakfast, Ling opened the chat room. It was full of other players' complaints and pleas for help. Looking at the disgruntled crowd, Ling directly posted his breakfast, boiling a pot of delicious porridge after waking up. Life is pretty comfortable. This was purely a baiting comment. Sure enough, a wave of denunciation rose in the chat room. Someone called him a fat cat. Someone joked about being his son to seek shelter. Just then, a player mentioned that their tribesmen could go out and gather even in the rain, making the chat room explode again. "Brother, don't lie to us. He's telling the truth. My tribesmen went out to find things yesterday too. Otherwise, I'd have run out of food long ago. I can prove it too. My tribesmen brought back herbs for me yesterday. Otherwise, I'd be dead." Seeing people confirm this made Ling realize it was likely because he had always treated his tribesmen well that they were willing to continue working in harsh weather. Thinking of this, Ling looked at his barbarians and found there were 3 new ones today: the timid, the barbarian, and the gluttonous. The timid barbarian was cowardly but said to bring unexpected harvests. The brash barbarian, as the name suggests, ate a lot but also had great strength. Just as they finished breakfast, the smart barbarian gestured to him, meaning he wanted to go out hunting. But Ling shook his head like a rattle. After all, the heavy rain was still falling. He didn't want his barbarians to risk their lives again. It's too dangerous outside. Wait until the disaster passes. Seeing his firm attitude, the smart barbarian didn't say anything more. Thus, they ate and drank in the tribe, and 3 days flew by. During this time, they polished off 1,500 pounds of yak meat, and the wild boar meat was completely gone. Just as breakfast ended, the heavy rain that had fallen for so many days suddenly stopped. Without any warning at all, the chat room exploded instantly after the system notification. The survivors were acting like it was New Year's Day. Someone said plenty of mushrooms had grown outside and they could finally have a feast. Someone found wild fruit everywhere but didn't know if it was poisonous. Others were crying, saying their thatched huts had been washed away and they had to rebuild. Ling looked at the big sun outside and gave a grand wave of his hand. "Brothers, set out. Gather." At Ling's command, 16 barbarians and 9 wolves set off toward a different direction from the hut. A place that had never been explored. You didn't hear wrong. It's 16. During the 3 days of rest, he had recruited 6 more barbarians. He now had 17 barbarians in total, so crowded in the hut they couldn't even turn around. Ling quickly stopped recruiting, waiting to upgrade to a wooden house before expanding further. While home, Ling didn't stay idle. First, he moved the bricks out of the kiln, then spread the damp wood out to dry. With the sun shining like this, he figured it would be bone dry by the end of the day. A code required 10,000 wood and 500 bricks. He just had to wait for the wood to dry to upgrade. Inside, the somnolent barbarian was still playing dead, having no intention of getting out of bed. Ling didn't bother calling him, treating it as if he were supporting a useless person. Anyway, he wasn't short on food. On the other side, the 16 barbarians and 9 wolves stopped in a jumble. The Wolf King mumbled a few sounds to the barbarians, the smart barbarian nodded, and the wolf pack and humans split up. The barbarians also had a quick exchange and divided into 4 squads for the hunt. If Ling saw this, his jaw would probably drop. He certainly wouldn't expect these guys' IQs to be getting higher and higher. While Ling was drying wood, he opened the chat room and instantly felt hungry. Someone was showing off that they had upgraded to a medium-grade thatched hut, saying it was very comfortable. Keep in mind, many players were still living in the most basic huts. By now, the wood was mostly dry. Ling clicked confirm on the panel, and a loading bar appeared over the high-grade thatched hut. It took several minutes for the upgrade to complete. The basic wooden house looked much sturdier. He no longer had to worry about a gust of wind blowing the hut away. After finishing his work, Ling posted a picture of the completed wooden house in the group. The players who had just upgraded to medium-grade huts instantly felt a sense of impending doom. Let me see. Is the upgrade after the thatched hut a wooden house? Does Brother Ling have some very powerful tribesmen? Share the stats. Ling ignored them and instead stared at his basic wooden house. Giggling. After upgrading to a wooden house, 2 traits were added. First, it could speed up the stamina recovery of tribesmen. Second, and even better, it added 50 points to the maximum stamina value. His barbarians fought tigers and bears every day, so their stamina consumption was heavy. A higher maximum stamina also meant his barbarians' combat power was stronger, and the accelerated recovery meant his barbarians could go out for more gathering sessions. The advantage was fully maxed out. Even better, upgrading the high-grade thatched hut to a basic wooden house expanded the area to 200 square meters. Although the population limit was still 30, it finally wasn't crowded. Ling clicked Produce Tribesman and the wooden house resumed automatic production. Instantly, 3 barbarians were produced. Even barbarians can be gentle. He might bring back some animal cubs. He is very greedy and can't resist tasting everything. This has also given him a powerful antitoxic physique. He is very dull, so don't try to teach him what to do. Just pray he doesn't cause trouble for you. Seeing these 3, Ling was a bit speechless. It seemed he had to take some dead weight every time. There's always a fool in every batch, right? The probability was just incredible. But despite the complaining, Ling kept them all. Anyway, there was enough meat, and more people meant more strength. Except for the dull-witted one, of course. He just had to wait for the hunting barbarians to return and see what good things they got. By the time Ling finished upgrading the thatched hut to a wooden house, it was pitch black. But not one of the barbarians out hunting had returned. He paced in circles inside, fearing they had encountered some danger. He guessed right. The barbarians were indeed in trouble. It wasn't that they couldn't win, but that there was too much prey to carry. Several barbarians gathered around Wu Wu discussing it. The smart barbarian waved a hand and decided to send a clever one back to report. Who did he send? The one who looked crazy and actually was crazy. He rushed back to the wooden house like a gust of wind, gesturing wildly at Ling and shouting, "Woo woo, ha ha." Seeing Ling still looked blank, he started dancing a wild dance on the spot, his arms and legs flailing as if he were having a seizure. Nice dance. This is the first dance I've seen since coming to this world. You're very talented. The noise woke up the somnolent barbarian inside. This guy hadn't even fully opened his eyes when he grabbed Ling and started running out. The 3 newly summoned barbarians followed behind. The frantic barbarian led the way, but halfway through he suddenly stopped, clapping his hands and shouting, "Woo woo," with a glazed look in his eyes. This time it really didn't look like dancing. It looked like a sudden medical episode. Right then, with a crisp slap, the somnolent barbarian raised his hand and gave the frantic one a smack. Ling was stunned. What was the situation? This guy actually laid hands on his companion. Even better, after the slap, the frantic barbarian instantly cleared his head, let out a couple of confused woo-woo sounds, and the somnolent barbarian gave a low growl with a sharp gaze. The frantic barbarian immediately became energized and obediently continued leading the way. Ling was dazed. It seemed that slap was more effective than any medicine. Soon they arrived at the hunting site. As soon as they got there, the somnolent barbarian fell to the ground and went to sleep on the spot. Ling didn't have time for him. He looked up and was terrified. 2 adult elephants, 1 calf and 4 buffalo were piled there like a small mountain. Holy crap. My barbarians are so brave they can hunt elephants? The smart barbarian walked up to him and gestured at the elephants, meaning they should be broken down into pieces for easier transport. Ling nodded and walked to the elephant. The panel showed an adult elephant could yield 800 portions of meat, and a calf 500. It totaled a staggering 21,000 pounds of meat. What's more, he could manually choose the portion sizes during the breakdown. Let's count 1,000 pounds as 1 piece. Soon the breakdown was complete. 21 pieces of meat were lined up on the ground. This way, one barbarian carrying 2 pieces would be enough. But just then, a thick fog suddenly rose around them. It was so white and vast he couldn't see a thing. Damn it, I forgot to turn on the 7-color night pearl to guide the way. How do we get back? Only the night pearl could guide lost barbarians home. Now it was completely dark, and it was impossible to tell north from south. The barbarians began to woo-woo in a commotion. The somnolent barbarian was woken up, gave a low growl, and instantly no one made a sound. Let's start a campfire first. He immediately used meat to trade for wood and stone on the trading market and built a campfire. But materials were limited and he couldn't make torches. Even with 4 campfires surrounding the people, they couldn't find the way home. The only lucky thing was that everyone was together. Ling saw the barbarians were all silent, so he quickly traded for more stone, crafted an excellent stone pot, and started roasting elephant meat. The sound of sizzling oil rang out, and the eyes of all the barbarians were drawn over. The food gradually dispelled their fear of the unknown. Only the smart barbarian kept his eyes fixed on the mist outside the flames, as if guarding against something. Ling knew in his heart that if a monster really came, he couldn't help much. Even though his physical fitness had tripled, he had neither combat experience nor barbarian strength. He could only hide behind them. After the meat was roasted, Ling built 8 more campfires, doubling their visible field. He let out a sigh of relief, but looking up, his heart skipped a beat. A full moon hung in the sky, shining with a strange brightness. It hadn't been a full moon for the past few days, but it happened to catch him today. He quickly shrank into the very center of the campfires and opened the chat room for help. Let me ask, has anyone ever camped outside the tribe at night? Ling's words were like a red silk ribbon stirring the eastern sea, flushing out many fish. Those barbarians who spent the night outside were gone by the next day. Want to try it? He immediately started clicking the trading market frantically. Buying wood and stone like money was no object. But as soon as he built a campfire on the east side, a black shadow would bump into it on the west side. As the full moon got brighter, the shadows grew more numerous. The barbarians all held their faces in a defensive stance, especially the smart barbarian whose eyes were locked on the edge of the mist, more nervous than anyone. Suddenly, a black shadow came straight for Ling's face. He saw it clearly, a pair of ghost-like eyes hidden in the shadow, so eerie his scalp went numb. As soon as their eyes met, Ling's head buzzed with all sorts of messy, terrifying images. At the critical moment, the somnolent barbarian, who knows when he woke up, rushed over like a gust of wind, clutching a burning piece of wood pulled from the campfire. Thump, it poked the shadow squarely. The shadow let out a hiss and turned into green smoke. Ling finally emerged from the terrifying hallucinations. He looked down and, man, the somnolent barbarian's hand had been burned by the fire, looking red and painful. Ling quickly scooped a bowl of cold water from the stone pot and carefully rinsed the hand. Thanks, brother. This injury is on me. I'll roast a couple more pounds of fragrant meat for you later to make it up. All you can eat. But just after he said it, several poof-poof sounds were heard. Several campfires on the outer edge suddenly went out, shrinking the remaining circle of fire smaller and smaller. The shadows darted even more frantically in the mist. The whoosh-whoosh sound made one's scalp tingle. Then let the fire burn brighter, so bright you won't dare come near. He simply built campfires in a continuous circle, one crowded against the other. The originally sub-zero weather was now baked to nearly 20 degrees. The barbarians were all sweating, but none dared to relax, their eyes staring at the movement in the mist. Because of this, the shadows didn't charge forward again, but circled around the ring of campfires. Occasionally, a reckless one would crash in, sizzle, and turn into green smoke. These things actually dropped. Ling picked them up and counted. Holy cow, 3 in total. After things calmed down, Ling opened the chat room and typed a long post about his experience. Ling himself was puzzled as to how his barbarians had killed 3 elephants, and could gather together to carry the prey. He couldn't answer the question, so he simply closed the chat room. Perhaps the fire was too warm. Ling's eyelids grew heavier and heavier, and he fell asleep as soon as his eyes closed. When he opened his eyes again, the sun was fully up. Beside him, only the somnolent barbarian was still snoring. The other barbarians were already roasting elephant meat. He joined the breakfast army. Just as he took a bite, he was startled by a commotion nearby. The gluttonous barbarian was clutching half an elephant leg and gnawing wildly. After that 100+ pounds of meat went down, his belly only bulged a little, as if he hadn't eaten. This guy must be a reincarnation of a giant stomach bag. In an ordinary tribe, he could eat a person into bankruptcy in one day. After eating and drinking their fill, they brought the things back to the wooden house. Ling took out the bricks fired yesterday, bought soil and sand on the trading market, mixed them with water to make brick blanks, and started up the new kiln. One kiln could only fire 500 bricks. He needed 2,000, so he needed 2 more batches to have enough. While busy, a system prompt said the newly recruited barbarians had arrived. Ling clicked the panel and laughed. Could it be irony? The boss part had to be online at the necessary time. In short, I recruited a temporary IQ representative with 2 sidekicks. He checked the tribal population, including these. There were 23 barbarians in total. Ling sent 19 out to gather and brought the triplets along to help build thatched huts. As for the somnolent barbarian, seeing as he saved his life yesterday, Ling didn't wake him. The triplets were obedient. Whatever the oldest pointed at, the second and third would do. Ling watched their clumsy movements, shaking his head and unable to stop smiling. This tribe was getting livelier and livelier. Just as Ling and the triplets finished their work, the traveling merchant from before returned. He started shouting from far away. "You old man have a dog's nose. You can smell me from so far away." Speaking, he pulled out 3 nature crystals, the treasures from killing the shadows last night. The merchant's eyes bulged like bells. He quickly pulled out a scroll. "These 3 crystals for a piece of scrap paper? You have nothing else good?" Ling thought it was fair, so he traded. The merchant stuffed the crystals away and ran off in a blur. He quickly opened the weather map in the tribe. It said there would be no issues for the first 5 days, but from the 6th day, water would start to dry up. On the 7th day, there would be no drinking water at all, and animals would riot. Holy crap! The rain disaster just passed, and now a drought is coming, and the tribe had to be reinforced, or the animal riot would easily crush it. No sooner said than done. He first started making. These only cost 5 wood and could hold 30 liters of water. He'd make 100 first. Before long, half the house was occupied by buckets. Next, he rushed into the trading market to sweep up water. Because it had just rained, the price of water had dropped by half. It was cheap as a giveaway. 3,000 liters of water could be exchanged for 6,000 wood. 1 pound of meat could get 20 wood, meaning 300 pounds of elephant meat was enough. He listed 300 pounds of elephant meat, quickly got enough wood, and filled all 100 buckets with water. He turned and called the intelligent triplets to help him stack these buckets higher to save space. As it turned out, the second and third ignored him until the oldest woo-woo roared for a long time before the 2 brothers started moving the water. Ling had just let out a sigh of relief when he saw the 3 of them carrying a bucket outside. Wait, not outside. These mentally challenged kids are too much fun. If I ask these 3 idiots to do anything again, I'm a dog. Tomorrow afternoon he could upgrade to a medium-grade wooden house. Wood also had to keep up. He directly listed 10,000 pounds of elephant meat to buy wood. The chat room exploded again. Brother Ling is making another big move. He's going to upgrade the tribe. Even a high-grade wooden house doesn't need this much wood, right? Yun Yue, seeing the chat room boiling, couldn't help but open the trading market. Looking at the 10,000 pounds of elephant meat listed by Ling, he felt he had to push for a high-grade wooden house. I'm still at a high-grade thatched hut. No, I have to catch up. Who knows when the next disaster is coming? Perhaps because Ling's demand was a bit high, the 10,000 pounds of elephant meat wasn't snatched up instantly, but stayed listed for a full hour. It was no wonder. The disaster had just passed, everyone had plenty of food, and they wanted to keep their resources for development. Ling looked at the 200,000 wood that arrived and directly converted it into 20,000 pieces of excellent wood. He was still 80,000 short of the upgrade. Let's see what harvests today brings. Time flew to night, and all the barbarians returned, gathering to eat roasted meat and drink meat soup. Ling tallied today's income: 10 buffalo, 5 wild boars, 15 deer, 1 tiger, and 2 elephants. Did they wipe out 2 whole herds? The buffalo and deer herds had been plucked clean. After processing the harvest, he had nearly 30,000 more pounds of meat. He didn't list it all at once, but slowly put it on the trading market. Before bed, he listed another 10,000 pounds of elephant meat. The chat room exploded yet again. I thought killing a sika deer was cool, but compared to Brother Ling, it's nothing. I killed 400 pounds of wild boar and thought I was filthy rich, until I saw Brother Ling listing another 10,000 pounds of elephant meat. While you guys are still discussing how Brother Ling is doing, I've already secretly upgraded the tribe to a wooden house. I guess I'm the second person besides Brother Ling, right? The speaker also posted a picture. Everyone clicked it and was stunned into silence for a long time. This progress was far behind Ling, but among ordinary players, it was already the ceiling. Yun Yu, who had been busy all day, had also just upgraded to a basic wooden house today. He had a massive stroke of luck. His barbarian found a withered forest, which was basically 10,000 wood for free, allowing him to upgrade successfully. Ling was sleeping soundly at this point, completely unaware that someone was catching up, just as those players didn't know a new disaster was on the way. You might survive 3 to 5 days without food, but without water under a blazing sun, never mind humans, even camels in the desert would collapse. Early the next morning, the sun was like a giant fireball, and the air was as hot as a freshly opened steamer. But it hadn't reached the point where one couldn't go out. Ling let the barbarians go out for free hunting, while he squatted by the kiln to work. Just then, the communicator DDD rang. It was a private message from Yunyun, with a blueprint for a stone wall attached. Brother Ling, I have a duplicate blueprint and want to trade for some meat. He was just worrying about having nothing to block the animal riot, and here comes the stone wall. He still remembered Yunyun's diligence in reminding him about the mist shadows, so he had to give a bit more benefit. I'll give you 100 pounds of deer meat. Enough. Actually, I traded 5 pounds of apples for this blueprint. Eating only meat wouldn't work for the barbarians. Fruit could provide a lot of vitamins. If they didn't eat it for a long time, who knows what problems would arise. He quickly asked how many were left. Yunyan said 40 pounds, originally intended to trade for other resources. Ling decided to take all the fruit and give an extra 100 pounds of deer meat, totaling 200 pounds. This won't do, brother Ling. I'm already taking advantage of you. How can I be more greedy? Ling didn't give him a chance to say more and threw over the trade window. Yun looked at the trade and had to click accept. By the way, you gave me info last time, so this time I'll give you a tip for free. Stockpile water. You'll make a profit later. Yun was confused but obediently started storing water. Next, 3 more barbarians popped up, who was always restless and might cause more trouble than help without orders. Who once he set his mind on something, even 10 oxen couldn't pull him back. And he was good in every way, but his ears were like they were stuffed with cotton. You couldn't hear him even if you shouted your throat raw. Ling looked at them and felt they were more reliable than the intelligent triplets, so he simply let them help dig a cellar. Ling was watching when he saw the hard-of-hearing barbarian carrying a bucket and pouring dirt into the house. Wait, don't pour it inside. Pour it outside, he shouted at the top of his lungs. The hard-of-hearing barbarian was stunned for a moment, as if he hadn't heard, and continued pouring dirt inside with the bucket. Man, a dirt-covered barbarian jumped out of the house in a rage. He rolled up his sleeves and was about to fight the hard-of-hearing barbarian. This was none other than the somnolent barbarian who had been sleeping inside. Ling quickly handed over a thorny vine. Don't fight, don't fight. For this kind, just give them a good education. The somnolent barbarian took the vine, gave a symbolic swing at the hard-of-hearing one, who immediately curled into a ball in fear, and then pointed at the clearing in the distance. The hard-of-hearing one finally understood. Ling was amused. It wasn't a fight, it was like a father disciplining his son. After disciplining the hard-of-hearing one, the somnolent barbarian went back to sleep, his return to nap sleep. While Ling was still supervising, he suddenly saw a barbarian running toward him, holding 2 design blueprints in his hand. It seemed Ling hadn't gotten a design blueprint since the first day. Quick, let me see. Better not be too advanced. Unfolding them, Ling almost jumped up. They were blueprints for stone and saxes. How many days had it been? Had he finally entered the Stone Age? Soon, he made 30 of each weapon, took a photo and sent it to the chat room with a sigh. Ah, I'm too far behind you guys, just entered the Stone Age. As soon as these words were said, the chat room went completely off track. The originally hot topics all stopped. It instantly turned into a stage for his bragging. The big boss is flexing again. We haven't even seen the shadow of a weapon, let alone stone ones. Brother Ling, I'll carry your stone spears for you. I'll dedicate myself to you. This female player even attached a photo of herself. But look at who Ling is. Women only affect the speed at which he draws his blade. He didn't even give her a glance. Just then, someone in the chat room dropped a comment. Do not start beyond friendship relationships with tribesmen. The consequences are severe. This left everyone itching with curiosity, but the person stopped talking. Ling's tribe was full of brawny men. I hope I haven't been targeted by these guys. At the thought, he shuddered. Even looking at the barbarian who was always smiling foolishly at him, he couldn't help but stiffen his face. What are you looking at? Get back to gathering. Just then, 3 barbarians returned, carrying 4 pieces of prey. Ling's eyes went wide. These things were actually the legendary silly roe deer. Unfortunately, they were all dead. He really wanted to see a live one to see just how silly they actually were. While he was wondering if they tasted good roasted, he noticed white steam rising from the kiln. This batch of bricks was done. Now he finally had enough materials for the ultimate wooden house. The ultimate wooden house requires rare century wood and 25,000 stone. Its traits include a livestock pen, and it unlocks new blueprints, Leaving barbarians alone in the wild is truly dangerous. While he was muttering, the White Wolf King howled toward the hut in the center of the territory. Ling was about to scold him for barking, but he looked back and, good heavens, a pregnant female wolf was lying in the hay, straining hard. The head of a cub was already showing. Are you asking me to help deliver them? The White Wolf King whimpered twice, as if in agreement. But Ling, a single dog, had never done this job before. After a flurry of frantic fumbling, he finally delivered the pups. The White Wolf King looked at the whimpering cubs in the nest and let a joyful howl, as if saying, thanks. When Ling returned to the door, he was shocked again. A group of silly roe deer were bouncing around the yard. Some were even tilting their heads at the wooden house door, as if studying whether this thing was edible. Ling didn't have time to think. He used some meat to trade for wood again and used it to fence off a simple pen in the tribe. Little White, drive them into the pen. The wolf pack gets meat soup tonight. The wolves quickly formed a circle. The roe deer were incredibly cooperative. When a wolf moved a step forward, they would hop, hop, hop 3 times. When a wolf stopped and bared its teeth, they would stand there tilting their heads, as if saying, why aren't you chasing me? Ling was delighted. They lived up to their name. they were truly adorably stupid. Once they were driven into the pen, Ling had the White Wolf King leave a few wolves to stand watch for the night to prevent a roe deer jailbreak. He didn't forget to take a screenshot and post it in the chat room with a caption, acting as if he were tossing out leftover cabbage. Unfortunately, he didn't see any of the reactions, missing a prime opportunity to show off. Early the next morning, Ling opened his door and was stunned on the spot. A mountain of dirt had been piled up in the yard. The panel showed his stamina was down to 15 points. Had this guy been digging all night? Please give me a dozen of these barbarians who are obsessed with working. Just then, the 3 new barbarians for the day refreshed. The fast-running barbarian, the powerful barbarian, and the one-eyed barbarian. Fast-running speed is incredible. Even a cheetah couldn't beat him in a sprint. Powerful strength is immense. If he threw a spear, he could hurl it 180 meters. One-eyed's vision is excellent, but he frequently fails to put food in his own mouth. Looking at these 3, Ling's heart was calm at first, but finally, he couldn't help but explode. Forget the one-eyed one. Vision so good he can't even find his mouth. But the other 2 are plenty strong. Go, go, go. All of you out to gather, Ling shouted at the barbarians in the room. They were used to it by now. Every morning Ling would make this face when seeing new recruits. The newcomers were obedient. Fast running vanished in a whoosh. Powerful shouldered a stone axe and walked with huge strides, and one-eyed ran out a short distance only to slam face first into a large tree. Fine, as long as they can get out. The previous episode mentioned the persistent barbarian digging a cellar in the yard all night. In Ling's eyes, this stubborn streak became a virtue. He had a sudden inspiration and prepared to build 2 more wooden houses for water storage. The wood he got from selling meat yesterday was just enough. When they were built, Ling's eyes lit up. The wooden house traits were, reduces the effects of heat and cold, delays decay, and prevents water evaporation. These 2 traits were perfect for the upcoming drought disaster. He then stopped the still busy persistent barbarian. Stop piling it in the yard. Go into these 2 houses and dig big pits. We need to store water. This time, the barbarian actually stopped, stared at the wooden house for 3 seconds as if confirming the task, and then vanished into the house to start working. Not bad, not bad. The persistent barbarian is a pro at working. Ling then went to the cellar opening from last night and peeked in. He was shocked on the spot. The pit was at least 200 square meters. The amount of water it could hold could probably fill half a pond. Meanwhile, a great hunting drama was unfolding on the plains. This operation was led by the smart barbarian, with 23 companions cooperating, while the White Wolf King brought 4 underlings to assist from the side. As for why there were fewer wolves, it was because one had just given birth yesterday, and the rest had to stay home to guard the roe deer. The smart barbarian kept saying things to the barbarians beside him, and they all nodded in understanding. Luckily, those 3 idiots weren't there, or this hunt would have been 90% likely to fail. At the smart barbarian's signal, all the barbarians charged like arrows toward the cattle herd. Back with Ling, he had already begun sweeping the trading market for water. After the sweet water was bought out, he bought purified water. As for the unclean water, he wouldn't even give it a glance. He stockpiled 80,000 liters of sweet water alone and gathered 70,000 liters of purified water. Because of his frantic buying, sweet water was temporarily out of stock. The sellers didn't think much of it, assuming Ling was starting a fish pond. Since he had enough water, he needed containers. Ling clicked the crafting panel. A simple wooden bucket required 5 wood. He crafted 5,000 in one go, consuming 25,000 wood. They could hold a full 150,000 liters of water. The 200 square meter cellar was packed to the brim. The rest could only be stuffed into the new wooden house. He simply built another 50 square meter wooden house, specifically for storing buckets. By the time he finished all this, his savings were mostly depleted, but looking at the 2 wooden houses full of water buckets, he felt very secure. The chat channel had long since exploded with guesses about what Ling was doing with so much water. Brother Ling bought 1,000 liters from me alone. Is he raising fish? I tried raising fish by the water source, but they all died. Actually, I wanted to drive up the price of water, but on second thought, if I drive it up and the big boss stops buying my water, what then? Facing these speculations, Ling didn't come out to clarify. But the player Yun Yun, seeing the sweet water out of stock in the market, was even more convinced of his previous thought. He had already exchanged all his surplus resources for water yesterday, and the storage buckets were piled like a small mountain in his yard. Brother Ling's intel is definitely right. Just listen to him and store more water. Time soon reached evening, and the barbarians returned, one after another. Their harvest was a full 37 cattle. Ling's jaw almost hit the floor. These were all killed by you? You must have wiped out the cattle's home base. The barbarian shouted excitedly at Ling as if claiming credit. Just then, the brave barbarian walked up to Ling and fell to his knees, holding a broken wooden handle, the handle of a stone axe. His voice was a low woo-woo. Ling heard disappointment and fear in that voice. Looking at the solemn expressions of the barbarians around him, he got the gist of it. Don't be sad. If it's broken, it's broken. It's no big deal. I'll make you a new one. Hearing this, the brave barbarian stood up instantly, the expression on his face clearly relaxing as if he had let out a sigh of relief. Ling was in no hurry to butcher these cattle. Instead, he took a group photo with the dead cows. "Brothers, look what I found. Infighting broke out in the cattle herd, and I happened to pick up a bargain." He didn't say his barbarians had hunted them. Even if he did, he feared no one would believe him. As soon as the message was sent, the chat room was instantly lively. Some players full of envy asked for the reason behind the cattle infighting, thinking they might go pick up some for themselves too. Others wailed in complaint that good things never happened to them, even praying to the heavens for a bit of Ling's luck. Some players expressed direct admiration, commenting that the big boss was not only powerful, but also favored by luck, and that they were truly convinced. Looking at the scrolling messages, Ling calculated his next moves. This harvest of cattle would likely push the tribe's reserves to another level. The anatomy yielded over 40,000 pounds of meat. He threw 10,000 pounds into the market to exchange for wood and stone, using the rest for more water. With food being sufficient, he naturally wanted to pursue a more comfortable life, like adding a lunch meal. That's right, Ling added lunch for the tribe. When the meat soup was boiling and fragrant, he posted it in the chat room to show off again. Sigh, the tribe is getting rich, so we have to enjoy lunch. 3 meals a day, can't miss a single one. In the photo, the barbarians were eating heartily from wooden bowls, making other players' eyes turn red. You have to understand, for some tribes it was good just to have 1 full meal a day. No one dreamed of having 3 meals like in modern society. After lunch, Ling found the barbarian's stamina had almost all recovered to over 100 points. "Go out for another gathering trip this afternoon. You must be back before sunset. Safety first." The barbarians gave a few woo sounds and set off. Ling continued his great water storing project. Just as he clicked the market to sweep for goods, a private message notification rang. It was from Zhang Dafu, whom he hadn't seen in days. "Big boss, see if you need this straw sandal blueprint. Requiring 10 thatch, 5 fiber, and 0.05 hide." This was good stuff. He had heard many players had worn out their shoes and were worried about finding replacements. More importantly, others lacked hides. Even if they had the blueprint, they couldn't make the shoes. But the hides he got every day were too many to use up. 200 pounds of meat for the blueprint, and I'll give you 10 pairs for free once they're made. How about it? Yes, absolutely. Thank you, Brother Ling. The two completed the trade in seconds. As soon as Ling got the blueprint, he started crafting, making 720 pairs in one go. Aside from the 2 pairs he kept and the 10 for Jiang Dafu, he privately sent 8 pairs to Yun. Yun thanked him repeatedly, saying if he had good stuff, he'd definitely think of him first. Finally, the remaining straw sandals were all listed for 500 wood a pair. Holy crap, Brother Ling has listed new items again. One sentence made the chat room boil instantly. Players all rushed to the market to look at the straw sandals. A player named Little Sika Deer was the first to buy a pair and posted a photo wearing them, making many male players drool. Spurred by Little Sika Deer, many others followed suit. Most buyers were girls. The 700 pairs of straw sandals sold out quickly, bringing 350,000 wood to Ling. I'm rich. Seeing how profitable it was, he started using meat to buy hides. 10 pounds of meat for one. He thought getting a dozen would be good, but in 20 seconds, he had traded 200 pounds of meat. After buying hides all afternoon, he got 100. Just as he was about to catch his breath, he remembered the persistent barbarian was still digging a water pit, so he went to check. The moment he pushed the wooden house door, he almost fell. Holy cow! He had dug the pit right at the doorway. The giant pit spanning the entire floor was bottomless, leading him between laughter and tears. Seeing the persistent barbarian wasn't there, he simply opened the market to keep sweeping for water. Seeing this, players began speculating again. Brother Ling is buying water like crazy again. Why? He couldn't have dug his own canal, could he? While they were discussing, Ling had already filled the pools in the 2 wooden houses with water. When the persistent barbarian opened the wooden house door again, he was stunned. He seemed to be saying, "Where's my hole? Where's the pit I dug? No need to dig anymore, this pit is big enough." But the barbarian turned and left, ignoring him completely. He looked angry, which left Ling between laughter and tears. "Fine, you have a personality. If you have a personality, then ignore me." At dinner time, Ling listed 1,000 newly made straw sandals, and they were snatched up in less than half an hour. He netted 200,000 stone and 250,000 wood. Seeing the players' enthusiasm, Ling decided to tell them the news about the drought. A kind reminder, the rivers are about to dry up. You all should stockpile more water. As soon as these words were out, the chat room was flooded with question marks. They didn't understand why a drought would happen out of the blue. The river drying up. Is that why Brother Ling is buying water? But the river water here is still full. It doesn't look like it's drying up at all. The chat room said everything. Some believed, some didn't. Ling didn't respond further. After all, he had said what needed to be said. Whether they stored water or not had nothing to do with him. After eating and drinking his fill, he began tallying the harvest. There wasn't much prey in the afternoon, only 2 wild boars and a jackal. Although even small meat is meat, that jackal was indeed excessively small, only a few dozen pounds. Once the anatomy was done, he fell over and went to sleep. The day had been very full, and it had truly exhausted him. Early the next morning, Ling stared at the new barbarian before him until his eyes went straight. The panel read, quote, "The panel read, Use Forces Barbarian can proficiently use various languages and communicate with any species." Did that mean he could have barrier-free conversations with Ling? The linguistic barbarian opened his mouth and spoke a bunch of unintelligible Lord of the Rings-style language, leaving Ling completely confused. Seeing communication was impossible, he had him follow the main group out to hunt. Ling then went outside. After walking a few steps, he saw a busy figure in the distance. Good heavens, the persistent barbarian had dug all night again. The ground outside the yard was full of 2-meter-deep pits. Luckily, these pits were a bit far from the tribe, otherwise Ling really feared he might accidentally fall in. Suddenly, he had a bold idea. Build the walls behind the pits. If animals charged over, they'd fall into the pits first. It could count as a layer of protection. No sooner said than done. Building a stone wall required 100 stone. He wanted to choose a grand method this time. The circle covered 20,000 square meters. Though the stone wall was only 1 meter high, it counted as a barrier. In places without pits, he placed cheval de frise, adding another layer of defense to the stone wall. By the time he finished, it was nearly noon, but not one barbarian had returned. Meanwhile, on the plains a few miles away, a sophisticated hunt was taking place. The linguistic barbarian was making calls toward a flock of sheep. The sheep raised their heads at the sound and responded toward him, then moved toward him with small steps. Unbeknownst to the sheep, 5 wolves and 24 barbarians had long since camouflaged themselves with leaves and were lying motionless in the grass, waiting for the prey to fall into the trap. The linguistic barbarian let out another long call. The sheep acted as if they had received an order and noticeably sped up, walking right into the encirclement the barbarians had prepared. He gave a sharp, low shout, and the barbarians on the ground erupted instantly. The 5 wolves also bared their fangs, letting out intimidating howls at the sheep. The sheep scurried in panic, but the encirclement was sealed tight. There was no way out. Seeing the sheep bleeding in panic, the linguistic barbarian suddenly mimicked a sheep's call again. The sound was gentle and long. Miraculously, the panicked sheep actually calmed down slowly and stopped struggling. Thus, a flock of 16 sheep were all tamed by the linguistic barbarian. Ling was currently firing bricks again when he heard the bleating of sheep from afar. He looked up and saw his barbarians returning with a flock of sheep. Ling immediately took a screenshot and then started setting up the sheep pen. Naturally, the sheep pen had to be near the silly roe deer for easy management. Once the fence was done, he watched the linguistic barbarian lead the sheep into the pen without any driving or intimidation. These sheep didn't even fear the wolves guarding the fence. Everything seemed a bit eerie. Seeing that all the barbarians' statuses had changed to gathering complete, Ling announced lunch. Everyone rushed toward the ultimate wooden house. They had long since stopped needing Ling's help. They knew how to prepare materials and cook for themselves. Ling took 2 photos, one of the sheep being driven home, and one of the sheep locked in the pen. What a relaxed and cozy life. Another harvest of sheep. In the World Channel, players' banter rose and fell. It's just a few sheep, too cliché. These 16 sheep aren't as much meat as the roe deer in the picture. I thought the big boss would at least pen 100 elephants to keep up appearances. Looking at these glaringly salty comments, Ling actually felt the heat. Realizing that if he didn't process his meat, it would probably rot in 2 days, he directly listed another 10,000 pounds of meat for wood and stone. Of course, another 100 pounds of meat was for fruit and vegetables. Though meat was the barbarian's staple, intake of fruit and vegetables was necessary. Standing in the sun for a minute, sweat dripped down his chin. It wasn't appropriate to have campfires inside anymore. He needed a separate house for dining. Soon, 2 wooden houses were built. The sheep and roe deer pens were also covered with wooden houses, fearing the livestock might be baked by the sun. The scorching weather lasted until evening without improvement. Even the wind was scalding. The sun in the sky started to look wrong. It was now a deep crimson. It seemed the great drought was truly coming. The chat room had already exploded. Someone said even taking a cold bath was lukewarm. Someone complained angrily that their tribesmen refused to go out and search for resources. Others sighed that it was ridiculous for it to get this hot right after a heavy rain. Ling looked at these messages and glanced at the water price in the market. The price was still the same. It seemed not many had noticed the river water was quietly drying up. Suddenly a wolf howl echoed throughout the plains. This wasn't Little White's voice. Ling pricked up his ears and saw the White Wolf King leading 10 wolves standing on the tribe's dirt mound observation deck. The dirt mound was the soil piled up from the persistent barbarians digging, creating a natural observation deck. Little White had spotted pairs of green eyes from far away. Those were the eyes of vicious wolves. He was all too familiar with them, having once been one of them. After a long wolf howl, the wolf pack outside the tribe launched a charge. But before they could clear the wall, plop plop sounds came one after another as they all fell into the pits dug by the persistent barbarian. The following wolves learned their lesson. He headed straight for the gate. Before they could get near Ling, the powerful barbarian hurled a spear, pinning the lead wolf to the ground. Another wolf lunged at the smart barbarian, but it was struck by a stone axe and then skewered through the mouth by a follow-up spear. The scene was swift and bloody. Little White stood obediently at Ling's feet, his eyes scanning for any wild wolves trying to break the defensive line. Suddenly, 6 wolves sneaked over from the back wall of the tribe. Ling grabbed his stone axe and braced himself. 2 stone spears whistled through the air, killing 2 instantly. Little White seized the opportunity to pounce, biting through the throat of the third. The remaining 3 were easily handled by the arriving barbarians. A battle that was supposed to be tragic ended in minutes. Afterward, Ling led the barbarians to check the pits. Good heavens! 11 wolves had fallen into the pit. He was wondering whether to tame them all when Little White suddenly howled twice at the bottom of the pit. The wolves inside immediately howled back in response. From the looks of it, they had recognized Little White as their boss. After processing the 34 wolf carcasses, Ling opened the chat room. Some had been attacked by camels, some besieged by crocodiles, and others ransacked by wild boars, leaving behind only wood and stone. Some even shouted, hoping the big bosses would get looted too. Ling immediately jumped out to slap them in the face. Sorry, I accidentally killed 30+ wolves. Extra meat tonight. Is the big boss speaking human? Accidentally killed over 30. Oh, it's Brother Ling. Never mind then. My bad. Brother Ling, Papa Ling, sell us some food. We've been looted. The house is empty. Seeing people begging for food, Ling wasn't about to act like a big shot. He was worried about having no place to store his excess meat anyway, so he directly listed 10,000 pounds, helping everyone get through this crisis. As soon as he finished, his 10,000 pounds of meat were snatched up in just 2 minutes. He added another 2,000 pounds, keeping 5,000 pounds of meat and 700 pounds of beef jerky for himself. According to tomorrow's weather forecast, the barbarians wouldn't be able to go out, and these rice buckets eat hundreds of pounds a day. Keeping more was definitely the right move. Early the next morning, after breakfast, while it was still relatively cool, Ling led the barbarians into the forest to pull grass. Yes, pulling grass. The grass was still alive now. Once the drought came, the sheep and roe deer would starve. Don't just pull grass. You can pick the tender leaves off those trees. He realized if he didn't speak up, the barbarians would literally only pull grass. After he spoke, one barbarian went up to a large tree and, bang bang bang, violently headbutted it. He snapped the tree in 3 hits and ran back to the tribe carrying the trunk. Ling was speechless. That move was one of a kind. After about an hour, Ling felt it was time and led the tribesmen back. Just as they returned, the chat room exploded. Someone shouted in panic that the river had almost dried up. At first, some didn't believe it, but in an instant, people found the water supply in the trading market was dropping. Now everyone panicked and rushed to the market to buy. Within moments, water and food were sold out. Some realized later, Brother Ling reminded us about the river drying up before. Did he get some intel in advance? I wish I had listened and stockpiled water. I regret not listening to him. Ling felt a bit helpless looking at the chaos in the chat room, but on second thought he had given the warning long ago. Using the opportunity to earn some resources later was done with a clear conscience. During this drought, forest players were the most comfortable. The temperature was several degrees lower. The most miserable were the desert players. No water, no food, and the market was empty. Ling looked at the giant sun, knowing the true test had just begun. A private message notification rang. It was from Yunyan. Thanks to the big boss for the warning. I stockpiled water in advance, so I'm not short on drinking water. He nodded and didn't reply, but he approved of Yunyan. At least they had a brain and followed his advice. Ling knew clearly that those players shouting about the river drying up weren't all truly out of water. Some just wanted to hoard water to drive up the price. What he had to do was simple. Wait for the water price to rise to a certain level, then dump his stock and make a fortune. As time passed, players got more and more chaotic. Returning to the wooden house, Ling arranged a bucket of water for each person to rinse off. Everyone let out excited woo-woo sounds and lined up to get water. After showering, everyone was full of energy. In the afternoon, as the sun set and the temperature dropped slightly, players had just become active in the chat room when they were terrified by the roars of animals coming from all directions. Even docile herbivores were rioting like they were crazy. Everyone was panicking, except for Ling, who sat steadily at home drinking meat soup. He knew the animals wouldn't attack tonight. Just then, another private message came from Yunyan. Brother Ling, those animals won't go wild tonight, will they? I heard a tiger. They won't, Ling replied, then added, but they will launch a total assault tomorrow. Big boss. Next time, please finish your sentence all at once. My heart can't take it. Ling could feel the other party's resentment through the screen. Just then, he heard Little White let out a wild howl at the commotion outside. Ling walked out of the wooden house and saw the moon in the sky actually had a faint orange tint. It wasn't a so-called blood moon, but the moon had become much brighter. More miraculously, the night mist had vanished. Does this mean he should hunt at night? He turned to look at the barbarians inside and was stunned by the panel. Every barbarian's stamina was full. Even the somnolent barbarian was full of energy. Was it a special buff? Seeing everyone was available for gathering, he had the somnolent barbarian take 20 companions, Little White and the 9 old wolves to go out gathering, while he stayed to guard the tribe with the rest. The massive team disappeared into the night. He had a premonition. Anyone who dared to go out gathering tonight would have an unexpected harvest. After they left, he guarded the outside, using cold water to splash his face whenever sleepiness hit. Time passed minute by minute. Finally, with a wolf howl, it was Little White, they returned. Ling ran out to meet them. He saw every 2 barbarians carrying a tree. Getting closer, his eyes lit up. It was rare century wood, exactly the material needed to upgrade to a high-grade wooden house. There were exactly 10 trees. He opened the upgrade panel. He had exactly enough. He pressed the upgrade button. The 10 trees vanished, and the medium-grade wooden house in the center creaked and groaned. It transformed into a 2-story building where the ground floor was completely open, with a wooden staircase leading to the second floor. The area was 1.5 times larger, now a full 300 square meters. Looking at the panel of the returning barbarians, everyone's stamina was hit bottom. Everyone worked hard. Tonight we're having a bonfire water splashing party. Hearing this, the barbarians were confused. They had no idea what that was. Ling knew they wouldn't understand, so he set up 4 campfires, brought out the meat, and took 100 buckets of water from the cellar. Tonight, enjoy the carnival. As the campfires were lit, the temperature that had dropped slightly at night rose again. But what did it matter? If it got hot, use cold water. Roast meat, dancing. None of it was missing. The barbarians were overjoyed by the party. They seemed to forget their fatigue and played until dawn. Before sleeping, Ling sent out a screenshot of the bonfire party. Hot summer, a bonfire water splashing party with free showers. Too cool. The chat room exploded instantly. Luckily, Ling was already asleep, or he'd have a headache. Tomorrow's animal assault, that would be the real battle. The next day, Ling slept until noon. He didn't wake up naturally. He was woken by the heat. Going for a shower, he said, heading to the water room. He threw a bucket of water over himself. The cool sensation was heavenly. Returning to the wooden house, he saw the barbarians all drenched in sweat, standing there not daring to move. Without his permission, no one dared touch the water. The rules were strict. Even eating had to wait for his command. He scanned the stamina panel. It had only recovered to about 80. Usually it would be full in a few hours. Was the heat affecting their rest? Everyone shower, then come back for lunch. At the command, the barbarians swarmed out. They loved showering. While cooking, Ling checked the new changes to the high-grade wooden house. There were 4 traits. 1. Faster stamina recovery for tribesmen, an upgrade over the previous one. 2. Increases maximum stamina for tribesmen. 3. Can build slightly complex animal pens. 4. New. Can use 1 million wood to directly rebuild a high-grade wooden house. This 4th trait was quite user-friendly, saving him the trouble of finding special materials. He opened the blueprints. Sure enough, there were 2 new items. While eating lunch, a message came from Yun. Sorry to bother you, but it's noon. I figure Brother Ling has woken up from the heat. I harvested a type of stone last night that I can't use yet. He attached a photo. Ling looked and his eyes went straight. The stone was labeled rare weight-bearing rock. Exactly the material he needed for an upgrade. Did you gather this last night? Yes. Did you not get this, Brother Ling? I got rare century wood for the wooden house. This weight-bearing rock is a necessary material for upgrading to a basic brick and tile house. Yun understood immediately. This stone was what Ling needed right now. He said he couldn't use it yet and was willing to give it to Ling first, reminding him to use his water and meat to buy more. After all, they might not be the only players who dared to let their tribesmen out last night. Ling slapped his thigh, cursing himself for not thinking of it. He immediately listed 10 sets of resources, 30 pounds of meat plus 100 liters of water each, in exchange for rare weight-bearing rock. This price was not low for a disaster year. Rare weight-bearing rock? What is that? For a moment, many players who hadn't sent their tribesmen out were stunned. They had never even heard of it. Some tribes were facing survival right now, so holding on to these rocks was useless. It was better to trade for food and water to save themselves. 50 sets of resources were snatched up instantly. Counting the harvest, he had 50, still halfway from the upgrade. There was no rush. Soon it was afternoon. Suddenly, a system notification rang out. The disaster was only just starting. That means tonight's beast riot might just be the appetizer. As evening approached, the sun still hung in the sky. The orange-red sunlight seemed to have set the earth completely on fire. The scorching temperature made animals hiss and roar in agitation. Ling used a large animal hide to block the sun, sitting on the observation deck looking into the distance. Suddenly, he saw a black mass of things flying over. No one said the assault would include birds. Flying over were woodpeckers, each extremely aggressive. They lunged from the forest direction, followed by jackals, with lions and cattle charging from the sides. The land animals were easy to handle, but these birds could peck a brain to mush. A barbarian skewered 2 birds with 1 stone spear. The birds behind didn't panic and continued flying toward the tribe. Strangely, they didn't attack humans. but focused on pecking the livestock. The roe deer were still tilting their heads and staring, not even realizing what was happening when they got pecked. I worked so hard for so many days to get this livestock, I won't let you things kill them all. Ling grabbed his stone axe and rushed to the sheep pen. He saw the guard wolf curled in a ball from the pecking. One wolf even blinded in one eye. He swung the axe for ages but didn't touch a single feather. Instead, he got pecked on the back of the hand. The axe fell to the ground with a clang. Right, the shepherd's whip. He quickly crafted one. The moment he got the whip, he unleashed a set of 5 lightning whips into the air. By sheer luck, he hit one and stomped it to death. But the whip was too hard to use. It took a long time to hit just 2 birds. The battle on the barbarian side was almost over, but then the remaining birds suddenly turned. A black mass of them pointed directly at Ling. Seeing the flock lunge, Ling gripped the whip, sweat breaking out on his back. This time, he was likely in danger. He swung the whip wildly. By sheer luck, he knocked another one down. Just then, 2 stone spears flew out in succession, each pinning 2 birds with perfect accuracy. After these 2 hits, only 1 bird was left in the sky. Young man, you have no martial arts ethics. Now it's my turn. Before he finished speaking, the whip in Ling's hand swung out. A set of 5 lightning whips sent the last bird spiraling down. He looked down and saw 2 still breathing, so he tossed them to Little White to watch. Little White was currently using his tongue to groom the bird's feathers. This wolf was famous for not brushing his teeth. While others were throwing water on the ground to cool off, those 2 were carrying dirt and pouring it on the ground, making dust fly everywhere. These 3 idiot brothers always came up with some new nonsense. After cleaning up the blood, everyone could shower. Hearing this, the barbarians' faces lit up instantly. Even the heat didn't feel as annoying anymore. Ling took a photo and sent it to the chat room. The photo showed dozens of bird carcasses, and he specifically showed off the whip. Another ordinary day, combat is so simple. Is Brother Ling hiding some powerful weapon? I see those beasts' heads are all smashed. I can't learn Brother Ling's ordinary. My tribe was taken over by beasts. I'm just squatting outside watching. Another player said, if there's no water, drinking animal blood works too. This reminded many people, but tribes unable to hunt large animals were miserable. The water merchants were hiking prices like crazy, making water more expensive than food. At this point, the sun was so poisonous it could melt a person. Ling simply soaked in a water pit to end the day, only climbing out after he was cool enough. The barbarians showered 3 to 5 times a day, living very comfortably. But other players didn't have this luxury. Drinking animal blood to survive wasn't even enough, let alone using it to cool off. Water prices kept rising. A liter of clean water was now 50 wood. He sold 10,000 liters at that price, and it was snatched up in a blink. This move was too big, and people in the chat room noticed. Someone immediately mocked the water merchants. Look, you guys hike the prices, and Brother Ling gets the benefit. Do you want to survive? While they were arguing, the long-awaited system notification sounded. As soon as the sound ended, wolf howls and sheep bleats came from outside. His own wolves and sheep had changed. The wolves were 50% larger and the sheep were stronger. Just then, a sheep jumped out of the pen to run. Little White, stop it. The newly evolved Little White rushed over and slapped the sheep silly with a paw. When Ling ran out, the sheep had obediently shrunk back into the pen. But just as he sighed in relief, something headbutted him in the butt. He looked back. It was a roe deer tilting its head and looking at his rear. You dare headbutt me? I'm eating you tonight. After dark, the animals outside were howling even more, but they didn't launch an attack that night. Many tribes only dared to sleep after dawn, but the heat was intense. They'd wake up from the heat at night and couldn't sleep comfortably during the day. By now, the river had completely dried up, and even the forest behind the house was withered. This was the true dead end. Ling seized the moment and listed 30,000 liters of water. The water price had gone crazy. 1 liter of ordinary clean water was 100 wood, a 50-fold increase. The water merchants were acting like they were robbing people, making Ling's prices seem reasonable. Not only was he not insulted, he gained a good reputation. This hellish drought is killing me. I'd rather have a blizzard than this. A rain disaster would work too. At least we wouldn't lack water. The drought is too much. One water merchant popped up with a smug tone of manipulation. This immediately drew an assault from all players. The merchant was clearly making a fortune off everyone's desperation. Who else to insult if not him? Ling scrolled through the records and couldn't help but laugh. It was a good thing he got those nature crystals that night, and even better that he chose that 7-day weather forecast. Otherwise, he'd probably be manipulated to death by the merchants too. Just then, a cow's moo came from outside. The barbarians who were resting on the floor all stood up, grabbed their stone axes and spears, and rushed out. This weather was the most draining. Even their stamina wouldn't fill up. The most miserable was the persistent barbarian. His panel showed unavailable for gathering, but he was still digging the pit outside the stone wall wider and deeper. Now the main force had rushed out, leaving only the somnolent barbarian inside. He leaned against the corner with eyes closed, as if nothing were happening. The mooing got closer and louder. Ling didn't follow them down. He knew he couldn't help and would only get in the way. He leaned over the second floor railing and looked down. He saw black shadows running toward him rapidly. In just a dozen seconds, the cattle herd was clearly visible. Every cow looked like a small hill, very sturdy. Based on this size, one cow would yield at least 2,100 pounds of meat. The cattle charge was fierce, and the barbarians were tactful, brushing aside to the flanks and purposely leaving the main gate open. Every other direction of the tribe was fenced with stone walls. Only the main gate was passable, and it only allowed 3 cows abreast. Bang! Sure enough, something happened. The cattle were so focused on charging that many hit the stone walls. The cows behind didn't stop and crashed straight into them. Thumping crashes followed one after another, turning the front cows into a traffic accident. Even better, outside the stone wall were the pits dug by the persistent barbarian. Plop, plop, cow after cow fell in, their horns hooking each other so they couldn't climb out no matter how they struggled. A few made it into the tribe. The barbarians threw stone spears from the sides. Squelch. The spears pierced the cow bellies but only went halfway in without penetrating through. The cows bellowed in pain and charged forward with heads down. Several barbarians trying to hold their ground backed off in worry. Only the powerful barbarian was different. He stood his ground and threw stone spears one by one with immense force. With a splat, the spears pierced straight through the cow bellies. The hit cows only ran a few steps before collapsing. The remaining cows, seeing this, tried to escape. The barbarians were about to chase them when Ling shouted for them to stop. He scanned the panel. The lowest barbarian stamina was at 42. It was so hot, if the cows turned back for a counterattack, it would be big trouble. When Ling came downstairs, the barbarians were standing there panting, sweat dripping down their heads. Go shower, I'll clean up here. Hearing shower, they immediately woo-woo shouted and ran to the water room. The focus shifted back. Ling opened the panel. 11 cows, 23,100 pounds of meat. He clicked Animize. This made the nearly empty food reserves rise again. He wouldn't sell this time, he'd keep it for himself. Previously, he had bought 75 rare weight-bearing rocks in the market. Eventually, maybe because they thought his price was too low, they were unwilling to sell. But he believed after today, plenty of people would be willing to sell. Just as Ling was about to bring the stuff into the wooden house, another moo sounded. Ling immediately became alert, thinking the cattle had returned. But following the sound to the damaged stone wall, he looked down and found 5 cows still in the pit. The pit was too deep for him to reach, so he had to wait for the barbarians to finish showering to help. When everyone arrived, they brought the cows up together. The 2 at the bottom were dying, so the one-eyed barbarian finished them off, adding another 4,200 pounds of meat. The remaining 3 weren't injured, so Ling quickly built a fence, reinforced the sheep and roe deer pens, and built a small wooden house, having the barbarians remove a few planks for ventilation. The cows were very well behaved throughout and didn't struggle. After finishing everything, Ling took another cool shower and sat comfortably in the wooden house, opening the chat room. He immediately saw the current status of other players. It's over. A pack of rhinos came here. They actually know how to charge. They leveled my house. I have it worse. Deer kicked down my hut and took my blood and meat. Does anyone understand? I was bitten by a rabbit. I used to kick a whole nest of them, but now I'm bleeding all over from being bitten. So humiliating. Look, those dog water merchants are hiking prices again. Why weren't their tribes looted? They should all be sent to the heavens. Ling opened the market. Sure enough, water was 150 wood per liter, and food was 80 wood or 65 stone per portion. It was ridiculously expensive. Some people even dismantled their houses to sell the wood just to buy water and meat. Ventilation is better than dying of thirst. Ling didn't hesitate and listed 50,000 liters of water. Not making money when you can is a fool's move. Looking at the complaints, he knew desperation and resentment were clogging the players' hearts. But what could they do? At most, vent in the chat room, then still be slaughtered and harvested as leeks. Another early morning, the heat was still suffocating. Ling, as usual, stayed by the kiln adding firewood. The bricks had accumulated to 4,000. Today, he also saw someone selling bricks in the market. Bricks were a necessity for upgrading wooden houses, and the seller only wanted meat and water, which suited Ling perfectly. He didn't think twice and traded meat for 3,000 bricks. Water was precious now, he'd save it if he could. No one could say how much longer this drought would last. He only had less than 40,000 liters of drinking water left. He was reluctant to sell, let alone trade it for bricks. In the chat room, the screen was full of gloom. 2 of my tribesmen have already starved to death. It feels terrible. Big boss, please give some food. My tribe is almost empty. The poster was a girl who attached a photo of herself looking seductive and pining toward the camera. Immediately, a simp came forward. Private message me, sis. I have plenty of food and water. Meanwhile, in a high-grade wooden house, Zhao Dan was lazily leaning against her bed. Her house was packed with countless food and water. She was ridiculously rich. She was one of the few who kept a full tribe during the disaster. Not because of luck, but because she purposely killed off all the weak tribesmen, leaving only the strong ones. Combined with her usual act of playing pity to scam food, water, and resources, it wasn't an exaggeration to say she was one of the richest people in the game. The man who private messaged her had no experience. Zhao Dan made a few vague promises about being with him later, and he eagerly sent a ton of resources along with plenty of "I will protect you" sweet talk. Zhao Dan took it all, but the sweet talk went in one ear and out the other. She frequently private messaged Ling, but he'd at most glance at it and never replied. He was a proper Sigma male. He didn't fall for her act at all. On the other side, Ling was moving bricks outside when he noticed the sky change. Dark clouds were gathering, and the wind turned cool, all signs of rain. Seeing this, other players were beyond excited. The water merchants remained calm, only adjusting the price back to the original. They had already made enough money. Whether players bought water or not didn't matter much to them. Thunder rolled, and the sky grew darker. It really looked like the disaster was ending. But the strange thing was the temperature. No one noticed the anomaly except for a careful person like Ling, who felt suspicious. Looking at the market, the water price had dropped to 1 wood per liter of ordinary water, and 2 wood for sweet water. Ling wouldn't be soft. He immediately started sweeping. The merchants didn't care at first, but by the time they reacted, the market had been cleared. Just now everyone thought it would rain, so many merchants listed all their stock. In that short time, Ling collected 200,000 liters of water. The previously scarce supply was rich again. It wasn't that he didn't want to buy more, there simply was no more water on the market. A massive thunderclap erupted, and the long-awaited raindrops finally fell. Players outside waiting for rain wiped their faces. They were just about to smile when they felt a searing pain. They quickly tasted the rain and jumped up instantly. Holy crap! It's acid rain. The chat room became a complete mess. Some players were burned all over by the acid rain, and some were stupid enough to catch the rain with their mouths, resulting in their tongues being burned. Soon, someone discovered a more serious problem. The disaster isn't over, but the water market is empty. Who bought all the water? Please release some. Ling returning the water? Impossible. He wished there wasn't a single drop of water in the market today. Other people with water felt the same. Occasionally releasing a few dozen liters didn't help. Having experienced the merchant's price hiking, everyone understood the trick of hunger marketing. The acid rain grew heavier, and the temperature became more stifling. Even the barbarians were pacing irritably. Ling knew he had to help them release their emotions, or trouble would brew. Suddenly, he had an idea. Since we're idle anyway, let's play arm wrestling, Ling shouted. The barbarians were very interested in the new game and all crowded around. Even the hard-of-hearing barbarian was there. Actually, he didn't hear clearly and wanted to hear it again. It's a contest of strength. The 5 strongest people don't have to cook tonight. Hearing no cooking, everyone's eyes lit up. They were listless before, but now they were full of energy, eager to compete immediately. I'll demonstrate once. You, come with me. Ling picked the skinniest-looking barbarian, thinking he must be the weakest. Arm wrestling with him would be a sure win. In the end, before he could even exert any force, his hand was slammed onto the table with a loud thud. He didn't even have a chance to resist. Only then did Ling remember the barbarian nature of Leiruo's people. Leiruo's barbarians might not be able to lift a 500-pound giant axe, but if he had remembered that earlier, he never would have stepped into the ring himself. Meanwhile, on the other side, Lu Yunyun was staring out the window with a face full of worry. The acid rain was falling so hard that his thatched roof had actually been corroded through. There was quite a bit of water and food stored inside. Although he had separated his resources long ago so this wouldn't be a devastating blow, it still hurt to see. Other players weren't as lucky. For those still living in basic thatched huts, the acid rain had burned giant holes straight through their homes. Those with animal skins could still block it, but those without were in miserable shape. If they didn't dodge fast enough, large patches of burns would appear on their bodies, and these wounds would spread to the surrounding skin. Many people couldn't hold on because of this. The chat room was filled with people selling their misery. Someone's arm was festering from the acid rain, and another person posted photos of 2 bloody mangled legs covered in burn blisters and holes. As soon as these photos came out, the player group panicked. The girls who valued their looks were especially terrified and didn't dare go outside. Ling was so mesmerized by watching the barbarians arm wrestle that he hadn't looked at the chat room at all. To avoid having to cook dinner, the barbarians were giving it their all. It wasn't until nightfall that a winner was finally determined. The winners cheered loudly while the losers trudged away dejectedly. All right, go cook, Ling said. After dinner, streaks of red lightning suddenly began to strike, staining the sky blood red. The acid rain poured down even harder. Looking at the roof of his own wooden house, Ling suddenly remembered that many players were still living in thatched huts. He wondered if they could hold up. Sure enough, when he opened the chat room, it was full of tragic photos. Even the ultimate thatched huts were starting to corrode. Ling could only silently pray for these players in his heart while feeling lucky that he had leveled up quickly and avoided many fatal disasters. The pitter-patter of the rain was exceptionally noisy at night, but for Ling, other than being a bit hot, it didn't affect his sleep at all. He fell asleep instantly and slept until dawn. The next morning, Ling was woken up by cheering in the house. Good grief, the barbarians were gathered around arm wrestling again. The winners were jumping with joy while the losers were crestfallen. All right, today is the last time. From now on, you aren't allowed to play this winner slacks off, loser works game on your own anymore. Except for a few dim-witted or hard-of-hearing barbarians who looked confused. Everyone else showed a look of understanding. Ling didn't bother with the confused ones. They might not hear him clearly even if he explained, so he let them communicate amongst themselves. He turned to the losing barbarians and said, "What are you standing there for? Come cook with me. I'm taking you guys to eat fried steak today." As he spoke, he took out an excellent stone pot, set it over the fire to heat up, and tossed a piece of beef right in. After frying it for about 5 minutes, it was almost done. Finally, he flipped it over. Ling poured a bowl of hot soup and chili onto the stone pot. Steam billowed up instantly and the aroma drifted throughout the room, making the barbarian salivate. Ling put the fried steak in a bowl, plated it with fruit and vegetables, took a photo and posted it to the chat room. Sigh, another ordinary day starting with a delicious fried steak. The chat room, which had been talking about the acid rain, went dead silent the moment they saw the photo. Then, it exploded. My God, someone take him away. My hands are still bloody and he's actually frying steak. Why are we in survival mode while Brother Ling is enjoying life? Same world, different fates. Someone even asked how the steak was made, saying the ones they fried before had no taste. Seeing the question about taste, Ling posted a screenshot of the excellent stone pot's description. The note read, "Excellent stone pot. Stone X20. Boil. Anything made with it will have the taste of salt." As soon as this was posted, the chat room exploded again. Messages flooded the screen. Someone urgently asked how the pot could produce the taste of salt, and why he hadn't mentioned it before. Others panicked, saying that not eating salt for a long time would cause hyperthyroidism, and begged Ling to sell them a pot, saying they were willing to pay any price. Ling pondered for a bit. Could it be that he was the only one in the world with the blueprint for the excellent stone pot? He scrolled through the trading market and saw no one selling it. After camping in the chat room for 5 minutes, no one said they could make it. This was a profitable business. He simply started making stone pots. This took him the whole day. By evening, the acid rain finally stopped, and he had finished 10,000 stone pots. Ling listed them all on the market for 50 stones each, with a cost of 20 stones and a labor fee of 30. He felt it was quite reasonable. As it turned out, they were sold out within 10 minutes of being listed. This item was snatched up even faster than meat and water. Ling originally thought the player base wasn't that large, but the frenzy over these pots completely reshaped his understanding of this world. In the chat room, the topic completely veered off track. Someone excitedly said they had waited all day and finally snagged a pot, claiming that even if times were tight, they still had enough for a pot. Many girls were even more enthusiastic, saying that getting a pot handmade by Ling felt like they were cooking with him, even affectionately calling him husband. Even more ridiculous, some people straight up called him daddy, saying it was a shortcut to the top. Black lines immediately appeared on Ling's forehead. How did this conversation stray so far out of bounds? Suddenly, a burst of cheering from the barbarians pulled him back to reality. He walked over and peered out of the house. There were actually 2 rainbows hanging in the sky. Even more peculiar, the end of one rainbow landed right in his yard. The acid rain had stopped. He walked down from the wooden house, and just as he reached the end of the rainbow, a private message popped up. "Excuse me, do you have food and water? My tribe is about to give up." Ling saw it was a request for resources and immediately wanted to ignore it, but a system prompt suddenly rang in his ear. Damn, there's an option like this? Are new rules coming out? Ling felt a bit suspicious, but then he thought, if he could check loyalty and kill them if it was low, and it could also expand his team, there was no reason to refuse. He clicked accept. As soon as he did, the rainbow flashed with a 7-colored light. Once the light faded, the rainbow vanished. A group of people suddenly knelt before Ling. Wang Yi himself was stunned, having no idea why he had suddenly knelt down. Ling didn't know how to handle it for a moment, so he adopted the tone of a Qing dynasty emperor. "Just call me Brother Ling. Master sounds a bit awkward. From now on, we're family. Eat as much as you want." Ling immediately built 2 small wooden houses in the tribe, started a campfire, and had the barbarians bring food and drink. He also told them to rest well after eating, and to look into what they could do now that they had surrendered. Wang Yi nodded heavily and immediately followed the others to eat. The reason Ling told Wang Yi to research new functions was because of a private message from the other rainbow. The sender was Zhao Dan, that girl from before who pretended to be pitiful to scam food and drink. Joining forces? Why wouldn't it be you submitting to me? Ling was baffled by Zhao Dan's message. His tribe was so powerful, letting him submit to someone else was a total pipe dream. On the other side, Zhao Dan saw the message and a cold sneer flashed across her lips. "Daring to make me submit to you. You're just a man. You think I'm not worth it." Ling was amused. She clearly looked down on men. Why waste more words? The current chat interface only had 2 options, surrender or declare war. Since they couldn't agree, war it was. Let the strength do the talking. When Zhao Dan saw that Ling dared to take the initiative to declare war, she was furious. This dead man was so ungrateful. So many men in the world never got the chance to meet her. Meeting her was a blessing earned over 10 lifetimes, yet he dared to declare war. How dare he? She immediately beat him to the punch by clicking the declare war button and added, "Then let's fight. The loser becomes the winner's slave." Some people are just rushing to be slaves. Fine, you have to stand by your words. It was too hot and Ling didn't really want to go out. Traveling a long distance would drain his stamina, and according to the system map, the 2 camps were too far apart. Running over in 40-degree heat would be too exhausting. But while he was hesitating, the clever barbarians gathered around hooting. Behind them, all 25 barbarians were standing with weapons, clearly asking to fight. Ling didn't stop them then. Target: enemy home base. Let's go! The barbarians immediately charged toward the destination. Ling hopped onto Little White, since he ran too slowly. With 9 wolves plus 25 barbarians, he didn't believe they could lose. Ling set out with his massive force, but at this moment, Zhao Dan had no idea that a crisis was approaching. She was still pondering how to attack Ling. After researching, she found that the rules of war were that destroying the opponent's main building counted as a victory. She immediately sent 2 special clansmen to sneak attack Ling's home base. These 2 set out with plenty of water and food. Ling, on the other hand, had no intention of bringing water at all. He had a large amount of unextracted water stored in the trading market. He was a walking reservoir. Coincidentally, both sides chose different routes. Ling took a wide main road to facilitate his large force, while Zhao Dan's people took a hidden small path suitable for sneaking, so they didn't run into each other at all. After traveling for over an hour, Ling's group finally arrived and found Zhao Dan's tribe in a forest. By now, the sun was high in the sky. Even riding Little White, Ling was covered in sweat, let alone the barbarians who were running. He quickly picked a spot to build 2 wooden houses, extracted a large amount of water from the market, made simple wooden buckets, and gave 2 to each barbarian, 1 for drinking and 1 to pour over themselves to cool down. Seeing that many barbarians' stamina was hitting rock bottom, Ling decided to attack in the evening. This would avoid the high temperatures and allow everyone to recover. Around 3 or 4 in the afternoon, the barbarians' stamina had mostly recovered. Ling finally gave the order: attack! Take only Zhao Dan's tribe. The barbarians charged forward like madmen. On the other side, seeing Ling rushing over with such fanfare, Zhao Dan sneered in her heart. Stupid. Giving up a sneak attack to fight head-on. Prepare to meet the enemy. At Zhao Dan's command, her clansmen were all ready, holding wooden sticks and bone clubs as weapons. But the next second, whoosh, a stone spear shot from 100 meters away, passing through a dozen clansmen and landing precisely at Zhao Dan's feet. She was scared witless on the spot. This was a clear show of force. Before she could recover, Ling arrived outside the tribe on Little White, with the barbarians following close behind and charging into the camp. Kill! Zhao Dan hurriedly ordered, but the scene before her left her completely stunned. Ling's barbarians could send 3 of her clansmen flying with a single strike. Her strong clansmen were simply vulnerable before the opponents. Just as she was collapsing, 1 clansman raised a wooden stick to block an attack. She had just gained a glimmer of hope when that clansman was smashed away by another group, crashing into a wooden house with a loud boom. Looking at Ling's fierce-looking barbarians, it was like seeing demons from hell. In no time, her clansmen were all knocked down. Soon, 2 barbarians escorted Zhao Dan before Ling. With a gentle push, Zhao Dan fell to her knees. Kid, are you going to surrender or not? You only get 1 chance. You called me kid, not okay. Zhao Dan was about to flare up, but she suddenly remembered that in war you had to destroy the main building to win. Even if the enemies were all dead, it didn't count. Seeing that Ling hadn't killed her, she quickly put on a seductive look, hoping to use her beauty to please him. But Ling directly said he wanted her to be a slave for 10 years. Zhao Dan's face instantly turned ashen, but she had to bite the bullet and agree, still praying in her heart that the people she sent to sneak attack could burn down Ling's tribe and help her turn the tables. Ling then ordered the barbarians to tear up animal skins to use as rope to tie up Zhao Dan and her clansmen. But the barbarians only knew how to fight and hunt. Their tying techniques were a mess. They wrapped the rope around the male clansman's chest twice before tying their hands, looking like they were tying up hams. Looking at the bound Zhao Dan, Ling even praised them for their good technique. Next, he went to seize the supplies. The haul was very rich. 3,000 pounds of meat, 250,000 liters of sweet water, 3 spiked herbs, 120,000 wood, 50,000 stone, 2,500 bricks, and 55 animal skins. But when counting the people, he noticed 2 tribe members were missing. His heart skipped a beat. Oh crap, I was careless. Could they have sent people to raid my base? Just as he was worrying, a private message notification rang. It was a message from Wang Yi, saying he had caught 2 suspicious people trying to set fire to the tribe. They were captured before they could even start. Ling's heart finally settled. He said to Zhao Dan, "Kid, you're being a bit dishonest." Zhao Dan still tried to quibble, saying the tribe had 30 people before, and 2 had been killed by wild beasts a few days ago. Ling laughed and said her words seemed reasonable and he almost believed them. But then he exposed the lie, stating plainly that news had come from the tribe that those 2 attackers had been caught. Zhao Dan went silent and turned her head away. Ling didn't press her further and had his clansmen tear down her tribe right in front of her. Watching her wooden house collapse, Zhao Dan finally believed Ling wasn't lying to her, but she couldn't figure out how he could receive news from home in real time. Just then, a system notification suddenly rang. He decisively said, "Don't announce it." But the next second, system notifications began to flood the world channel one after another. This was the first time the game had sent a notification in the chat room. The comments section below was instantly flooded. Someone marveled that a boss is a boss, and the game's first notification was given to Brother Ling. Someone thanked Brother Ling for securing the 3 bits of salt, and some were curious about which 2 unlucky souls ran into Brother Ling. Ling cursed in his mind as he looked at the comments. They said it wouldn't be public, but it turned out only the details were private. Now everyone knew it was him. Just after he finished complaining, another system notification rang. Ling instinctively looked at Zhao Dan and saw her staring at him with terrified eyes. He clicked on the details and saw Zhao Dan's panel. Only then did Ling understand why Zhao Dan was so terrified. This was a shackle the system had placed on her. Clansmen who surrendered voluntarily were tribe members, but those who were conquered directly became system-recognized slaves. It was terrifying. He looked at the panel for Zhao Dan's clansmen. Strong barbarian. Status. Slave. Trait. Hardworking. Won't resist. Is this unlocking a new unit type? Does the system want me to build a slave army? Ling immediately ordered everyone to return home before noon. Zhao Dan instinctively snapped to attention and replied, "Yes, master." She only realized after saying it that her consciousness was being controlled by the system. She was in total despair. Ling didn't make things hard for her and let a wolf carry her back to the city. He figured Zhao Dan had just gone through a massive roller coaster of emotions, and there was no need to be heartless. A shrewd person like her might be very useful. When he got back to the tribe, Ling was stunned. The tribe's previous 200 by 200 wall had now been expanded to 400 by 400, and the height had increased by over 2 meters. New wooden houses had also popped up. Wang Yi was busy directing the construction. Seeing Ling return, he said that after surrendering he had gained building abilities and had also shared the stone wall blueprint. Worried about sneak attacks, he had reinforced the walls and expanded the territory. "Well done. Extra food tonight, you smell sour. Go take a bath." Hearing this, Wang Yi quickly fetched water and hid in a wooden house to bathe. Ling thought, this kid is so shy about taking a bath, and silently labeled him as timid and insecure. Back in the wooden house, he began to tally his resources. This was his entire fortune after absorbing one tribe and annihilating another. It could be described as extremely abundant. The only thing missing for upgrading to a brick and tile house was 11 pieces of rare load-bearing ore. Zhao Dan happened to see Ling's furrowed brows, leaned in, and asked respectfully, "Master, do you have some worries? Why not tell your humble servant?" Clearly, Zhao Dan had chosen to accept her current status. She even asked about Ling's worries with a unique, charming air. Ling told her to speak normally and said he wanted to collect load-bearing ore. Zhao Dan immediately took the task, saying she couldn't guarantee it but could try. Zhao Dan opened the chat room and sent a message saying she needed load-bearing ore, attaching a carefully posed photo of herself looking haggard. Since she had lost the battle during the day, she did look a bit weak. In no time, many people were willing to trade at a low price. She quickly collected 30 pieces. Ling looked at the ore with a head full of question marks. He had struggled so much to collect them, so why was it so easy as soon as Zhao Dan spoke? A bunch of simps. They treat men differently. From now on, let Zhao Dan handle the trades. Zhao Dan sat nearby like a pet waiting for praise. Ling praised her briefly. Then she begged, "Master, can you give me a wooden house? It's dangerous to sleep with the clansmen." Ling believed her and pointed to a wooden house for her. That was Wang Yi's house. He wanted to help Wang Yi find a partner. After all, he had surrendered voluntarily, could do infrastructure, and manage the tribe well. Otherwise, with Wang Yi's shortness and insecurity, it would probably be hard for him to find a partner. Early the next morning, with the help of the slaves, the wall was being built very quickly, but according to the system blueprint, it could only be built up to 2.4 meters. Ling also discovered that the things built with one click using system blueprints were of the lowest grade. The good ones had to be built purely by hand. Moreover, no one on the World Channel mentioned this. Likely some people were hiding the information. Suddenly, a scream broke the silence. It came from Wang Yi's wooden house. No way, these two are playing this hard so early in the morning. Inside the wooden house at that moment, Wang Yi was shouting at the just awakened Zhao Dan, "Why are you in my wooden house? And why are you sleeping with me? What does it matter? We're both women anyway. I didn't even mind you, and here you are minding me." Zhao Dan rubbed her sleepy eyes and wanted to laugh at Wang Yi's flustered, stuttering appearance. Wang Yi grew anxious and leaned into Zhao Dan's ear, whispering that she had to keep his identity a secret. Zhao Dan immediately understood. It turned out Wang Yi had disguised herself as a man to seek refuge with Ling. She nodded repeatedly, promising to keep the secret, while secretly finding it hilarious. After all, if the master didn't even take an interest in her, how would he ever notice Wang Yi? Wang Yi breathed a sigh of relief, finished tidying up, and walked out of the wooden house. When Ling saw him come out, he spat out the soup he had just sipped. It wasn't because it was too hot, but because only 2 minutes had passed. He should have at least lasted 3 minutes, right? He turned around and started another pot, throwing in several bull penises. When Wang Yi came over wanting to drink some soup, Ling blocked him. "You can't drink from this pot. Yours is the other one." Wang Yi peered into the pot of bull penises and his face instantly turned green. There were 6 of them. This was enough to make him burst. "It's for your own good, not one less. You have to eat them all." These words happened to be overheard by the arriving Zhao Dan, who couldn't help but burst out laughing. "Even your woman is laughing at you. Hurry up and supplement yourself." 2 minutes. I feel sad just thinking about it. After saying that, Ling went to get busy. He went outside to look at the panel for the advanced wooden house. It said the upgrade required 10,000 bricks and 100 rare load-bearing stones. He immediately clicked the upgrade button. The original 400 square meter wooden house expanded to 500 square meters. The house was now frost-proof, heat-resistant, and well-ventilated. Ling declared it absolutely perfect. He clicked on the attributes of the brick and tile house and found it actually had 5 traits: double stamina recovery speed, maximum stamina increased by 100, and high temperature resistance. These traits were perfect. Doubling the stamina recovery speed was truly great, let alone the increase in maximum stamina. It also unlocked 2 new blueprints: the torch manufacturing blueprint and the padded beast skin clothing manufacturing blueprint. Ling nodded with satisfaction. Both were practical items. If a snow disaster hit, the padded beast skin clothing would save many lives. Suddenly, a new settlement function appeared in his field of vision. Clicking it revealed 3 panels: design blueprints, population distribution and grade hierarchy, and safety analysis. Looking at the design blueprints first, besides his original ones, there were 4 new ones: sturdy fence, wooden sled, latrine, and wooden storage cabinet. He thought about having Wang Yi replace the fence with the sturdy one later and build a few latrines. After all, there were girls now, so they couldn't be too casual. Next was population distribution. The panel was simple. Ling's barbarians were at full capacity, Wang Yi's tribespeople numbered only 18, and Zhao Dan's tribespeople were also at full capacity. Surrendered tribes could no longer produce clansmen, nor could they let Ling's tribe help them reproduce. Ling estimated the tribe's maximum size could reach 90 people, depending on the number of players recruited. Finally, the safety analysis contained only one line: city wall construction is complete and sufficiently safe, but the pits within the tribe have not been filled. Ling suddenly remembered the persistent barbarian. Having not seen him today, he hurried out to look for him. It turned out the guy was digging a hole inside the tribe. Since the inner walls hadn't been fully dismantled, he started digging right in his own backyard. Wang Yu stood by with a bitter smile. He didn't have the authority to manage Ling's barbarians, as his status was 1 level lower. "Stop digging here, go dig outside." The persistent barbarian was unwilling at first, but upon hearing he could dig elsewhere, he stopped immediately. Ling pulled him to the outermost city wall. "Dig here. It's best if you dig a moat." The guy instantly got fired up, shook off Ling's hand and started working. Wang Yi supported his forehead, inwardly sighing. What kind of divine tribespeople were these? On the other side, the chat room was incredibly lively. Players were fighting tooth and nail. "I captured a level 6 slave, but the player is a fat slob. It would be better if it were a girl." Seeing this, Ling silently gave a middle finger, inwardly noting how lucky he was. The first player he met was willing to surrender, and the second was a weak female player. If the 2 of them had teamed up to cause trouble, he might not be so comfortable. As evening approached, the system notification finally rang. Once the system announced the news, most players breathed a sigh of relief. Only those tribes that were 1 step away from winning were particularly unwilling, but taking further action would violate the system rules. With no other choice, the disgruntled victors simply stripped their opponents of all resources. Consequently, prices crashed instantly. Now, the poor could hardly afford to eat, while the rich had resources piled up like mountains. Watching the orange moon slowly disappear, Ling felt a bit uneasy. The water shortage hadn't been solved at all. Dried up lakes couldn't possibly have water overnight. His tribe had 90 people, and their water consumption was already high. He was barely scraping by with the water he had hoarded, so he certainly wouldn't sell it. Ling opened the chat room, and one message caught his eye. "Brothers, weren't you all screaming about a water shortage for the past 2 days? Did I see wrong? Why does it feel like there's enough water now? How is it enough, brother? Did you forget that people die in fights? When people die, the water shortage naturally isn't as severe." As soon as these words came out, the chat room went silent. It seemed that even though the drought had ended, the water problem remained. As Ling was scrolling through the messages, his private DMs pinged. It was from Lu Yunyan. "Brother Ling, how do you treat those slaves? Just raise them normally. Once they're strong, they can be used as meat shields. And what about the players who surrendered as servants? That depends on your mood. If you find them useless, killing them is no big deal. After all, the power of life and death over a servant is in your hands, right?" Lu Yunyan breathed a sigh of relief, said understood. "Thanks, Brother Ling," and hung up. He then called over Wang Wu and Chen Bin, whom he had just subdued, and led them to the hillside where the final battle had taken place. In fact, Lu Yunyan had been cautious all along. These 2 had no good intentions. They obeyed him on the surface but secretly hoarded food and weapons, even stealthily sending messages to opponents, waiting for him to suffer losses against enemies so they could reap the benefits. "Do it yourselves." The 2 men's faces instantly turned pale. They naturally knew what doing it yourselves meant, but their system-bound servant status left them unable to resist. Their hands uncontrollably gripped their own necks. After a moment, their legs kicked, and they stopped breathing. 2 ill-intentioned fellows. Living was just a waste of food. Early the next morning, Ling was busy boiling bull penis soup for Wang Yi. This time, he put 6 in one pot. Last night he specifically walked past Wang Yi and Zhao Dan's wooden house, thinking to himself that since he just moved in with a woman, there should be some novelty. How could there be no activity the next day? He finally concluded that this kid Wang Yi must have a kidney deficiency. Not only was he incapable, but he was also a short timer. This was simply too fatal. While brewing the soup, Ling kept glancing toward Wang Yi's house. After a while, Wang Yi came out, and Ling immediately called him over to drink. Wang Yi's legs went weak at the mention of it. He wanted to run, but his body wouldn't obey. Seeing Ling's smiling face, he said no with his mouth. But his body was quite honest. Wang Yi was so angry his nose almost went crooked. It wasn't that he wanted to come, his body was out of control and had run over on its own. But since he was still hiding the fact that he was a woman in disguise, he could only sit down with a silly smile. We're all men here, who doesn't understand? This soup is effective for tonifying the body. Hurry up and drink. Wang Yi could only awkwardly say the soup was a bit hot and he wanted to wait until 2 o'clock to drink it. Thinking he was embarrassed, Ling gave him face by saying he would go for a stroll and let Wang Yi drink slowly. When he reached the first floor, Ling saw the barbarians holding weapons, preparing to go out for food, each one full of energy. He ordered everyone to set out, reminding them to stay safe and to take Little White along, since Little White and the others had keen noses to help find prey. The 9 wolves followed Little White, howling and excitedly heading out with the barbarians. Once the clansmen had left, Ling went to the brick firing area. Since the tribe expansion yesterday, 3 kilns had been built, now capable of firing 1,500 bricks at once. Suddenly, Ling saw a snowflake falling from the sky. He reached out to catch it, and it really was snow. Meanwhile, the chat room exploded. What's going on? Are the drought and the snow disaster going to connect seamlessly? This is too terrifying. I don't even have 10% of the storage needed to survive the winter. What do I do? Others urged everyone to find resources while the snow was still light. For a time, everyone was busy hoarding food for the snowy weather. No one dared to idle. By afternoon, as the snow grew heavier and the weather turned colder, Ling worried about the barefoot barbarians outside. Just then, wolf howls came from outside the tribe. The clansmen looking for resources had returned. They had actually herded back over a dozen reindeer. Ling quickly built a large enclosure to raise them. Now he wouldn't panic even if the snow disaster hit. By nightfall, heavy snow accompanied by a northwest wind swept across the entire region. The system prompt suddenly rang. Beep! A new natural disaster snow moon has begun. No one expected the snow disaster to follow so closely after the drought had just ended. The moment the disaster began, the world chat room instantly seethed. Someone anxiously said they had no preparation at all. Others were confused by the name Snow Moon. Remembering that the last disaster was the drought, they guessed this one might be related to heavy snow. Soon, someone concluded that Snow Moon must refer to the nights covered in heavy snow. Ling glanced at the panic in the chat room but didn't take it too much to heart. For him, the real test would be the severe cold in the latter half of the night. Sure enough, by late night, the situation for other players became difficult. Those in thatched huts huddled together for warmth. Even for those in wooden houses, the indoor temperature kept dropping, leaving people shivering with cold. But Ling's tribe was a different scene of warmth. A bright charcoal fire was lit in every wooden house. This charcoal burned hot and long, providing much more heat than ordinary wood. The barbarians sat around the campfires almost entirely unaffected by the cold. The most comfortable of all was Ling himself. His bed was covered with soft wool, topped with 3 layers of thick animal skins, and he used 3 layers of covers. Nestled inside, he was warm and cozy, truly living a life of luxury. Early the next morning, Ling first took a photo of himself tightly wrapped up in bed, and then leisurely posted it to the chat room. This wave of flaunting his wealth directly made other players sour. Report him. Brother Ling is flaunting his wealth. Those animal skins look different. Brother Ling's resources are just too abundant. Ling didn't look at the comments again, his heart full of the satisfaction of a successful boast. While he was feeling smug, the sound of snow shoveling came from outside. It turned out the clansmen were using simple wooden tools to shovel snow, and were spreading chopped wood on the ground to prevent it from becoming muddy when the snow melted. After finishing his own chores, Ling shouted upstairs for Wang Yi and Zhao Dan to come down for breakfast. The dining table was packed. Steaming beef soup, fragrant roasted meat, and a particularly conspicuous pot of bull penis soup. As soon as Wang Yi saw that pot of soup, he panicked and quickly pretended to burp. "Oh, I'm so stuffed. I can't eat anymore. Do you think I'm stupid? You're full before you even ate. I made this bull penis soup for your own good, didn't I?" Wang Yi wanted to cry but had no tears. He finally understood how annoying the phrase "it's for your own good" could be. There was clearly nothing wrong with his body, yet he was forced to drink this stuff every day. Zhao Dan, on the side, was already laughing so hard she couldn't stand straight. Ling turned and glared at her. After Ling went downstairs, he saw the barbarians had just finished breakfast, still holding their weapons, looking like they intended to go out gathering. He casually clicked on the attribute panels of several barbarians and found that most of their stamina was at the full 200 mark. Only the persistent barbarian was lying by the campfire sleeping soundly, his stamina at only 7 points. Ling shook his head helplessly. This guy really didn't value his life, running out to dig holes in such heavy snow. The natural disaster could get worse at any time. Are you sure you want to go out gathering? You know a snow disaster is much more dangerous than a drought. If you encounter trees collapsing under the snow or fall into a snow pit, it could easily cost your life. But the barbarians beat their chests and hooted with a very determined attitude. Fine, then set out. After speaking, Ling looked at the White Wolf King lying nearby. Little White, the job of finding prey is up to you. Little White had wanted to fake sleep to avoid it, but after being woken up, he gave him a look full of grievance. However, he calculated that if he had to go out and freeze, he couldn't let his wolf companions enjoy themselves at home. He then led the wolf pack and followed them out. Meanwhile, Ling returned upstairs and saw Wang Yi still obediently eating the bull penis, nodding with satisfaction. But after a while, he felt his right eyelid twitching repeatedly, and he felt inexplicably flustered. Suddenly thinking of something, he rushed to the first floor and looked. He saw the sleepy and persistent barbarians lying in the corner, but the three wise brothers were nowhere to be found. His heart skipped a beat and a bad premonition surged in his mind. Could the omen of his right eyelid twitching come from those three treasures? On the other side, a sudden burst of urgent wolf howls broke the silence of the snowy field. A barbarian immediately rushed toward the sound and soon stopped outside a cave. The entrance was surrounded by thick white snow, but the mouth of the cave itself was bare. Its concealment was incredibly good. Barbarians had passed by a dozen times before without noticing it. If the heavy snow hadn't covered the surrounding vegetation, it would have been impossible to find. The eldest wise barbarian exchanged glances with his two brothers and nodded. The three of them jumped in with a whoosh. Who knew this cave led downward? They hadn't brought torches, nor did they know how deep the cave was. This so-called wisdom was truly laughable. If Ling knew they were so reckless, he definitely wouldn't have sent these three treasures out. Ling was frantic with worry in the tribe, repeatedly praying that those three treasures wouldn't cause trouble. They were dancing and cheering on the spot, but once the excitement passed, they were dumbfounded. It was pitch black in the cave. Without torches, everything they saw was a blur. Suddenly, a zzz sound chirped in their ears. The three brothers shivered all over. It was bats. More and more bat cries came from the shadows, followed by pairs of crimson eyes lighting up in the darkness. The three brothers turned and ran in terror. The bats chased closely behind. Because they couldn't see the path, they could only close their eyes and charge forward. Every time they looked back and saw those crimson eyes, they ran even faster. In terms of escape speed, even a rabbit would have to call them Big Brother. As they ran, a field of sparkling light suddenly appeared ahead. This turned out to be a natural karst cave, and those shining white things were all stalactites. The three brothers were somewhat sharp-witted. Seeing the bats stop at the edge of the stalactites, they immediately lunged forward to grab the stalactites and hide. But the stalactites were too solid. The three of them pulled for a long time without moving. The eldest had an idea. He raised his stone axe and hacked away. Finally, he broke one off. The other two brothers immediately clapped and hooted in approval. After the eldest broke off the third one and let the two brothers hold them together, he turned and ran toward the cave entrance. He even naively thought the bats were afraid of the stalactites and deliberately moved toward the swarm of bats. This time, he stirred up a hornet's nest. The bats immediately lunged and bit. The three brothers yelled in pain, but fortunately they ran faster than the bats and soon reached the cave entrance. The three brothers jostled each other, all wanting to be the first one out. The eldest was the most ruthless. He kicked the third brother down, threw out a stalactite first, and then grabbed the cave entrance to scramble out, kicking the second brother in the process. Seeing the second brother dazed from the kick, the third brother, he followed the eldest's lead, grabbing the cave entrance by bracing against the second's back. As he exerted force, he also kicked the second down. By the time the second regained his composure, the bats were almost upon him. He hurriedly threw the stalactite toward the entrance, but the third, waiting outside, deliberately acted mischievous and tossed the stalactite back down. It landed right on the second's foot. The second screamed in pain and threw the stalactite back up with a backhand, hitting the third and making him stumble back several steps. A wolf's howl rang out. Ling quickly ran toward the tribal gate. He saw one of Little White's subordinates leading several barbarians over. As they got closer, he saw clearly that the barbarians were carrying stalactites in their arms. The three brothers cheered and showed off the stalactites in front of him. Ling gave them a few helpless words of praise, but suddenly noticed the word grindable on the stalactites. Ling was overjoyed. Wasn't this the raw material for the special white powder needed to upgrade the brick house? He quickly had the three brothers transport the stalactites back to the brick house. Sure enough, the prompt for special white powder appeared before his eyes. Do you still remember where the dragon cave is? The eldest nodded, but the second and third shook their heads.